only diplomacy is working here, where she can talk but not act.
And it has to boil down to our government reacting. She can only do so much or say so much. She can only comfort them and talk about the individual cases that she's heard about, the young lady down there, the student, the mother that is stranded down there. But unless the government actually, does something, like you said, there isn't much that she can do. And I love that she has come out to speak. The previous ambassador was... let me not even go into it, because you would wonder where he is if you were living there, because you would rarely ever hear any concern or you wouldn't even know whether he's stranded or he's just unable to act or there's a problem somewhere. So I love that Sarah Serem actually is coming out to paint the picture as it is, that she can't do anything to help.
City, what is it?
This is something that we're probably going to discuss in greater length during the hour when I'm making my presentation for the day. But if you want to understand how it is, these little issues we keep discussing, little in the sense that they occur on a daily basis and we talk about them, and you never see the full manifestation of them until such a thing happens. The utter neglect that the government has for its citizenry. We've said this, and sometimes it seems like all we're doing is attacking the government and saying things that are negative about the government. But it isn't. When we talk about the segment we have of lest we forget, this is a lest we forget, another one that has come into being. We talked about the locusts, we talk about the floods, we talk about our schools. Again, now we have a situation where we have Kenyans who are in China legally. We know why they went there. We are represented by a mission in China, but the person who's in charge is telling there's nothing I can do now. People would rather be quarantined in their own country.
Yes.
True.
You at least feel you're close to home, you can talk to people. It's a totally different feeling. That one is a feeling of complete abandonment. You've been abandoned completely.
When your government tells you there's nothing I can do.
What on earth do they mean?
What do you mean there's nothing you can do? Honestly, I mean, it just...
What do they mean?
Organize for the people to come home. There's direct and utter concern. Somebody is there, they've been quarantined, they've been told you cannot get out, they haven't been, confirmed that they have contracted this virus, but there's fear.
And aside from the fear, these are people who cannot live their normal lives. They cannot go out to buy veggies or groceries.
You can't do anything.
They're literally indoors, probably hungry, unable to shop or do their jobs and earn a living. They are literally, it's not life as usual. So it's aside from the fear, they're not living like decent human beings. They're not living the dream that they went out there to chase. So we need to do something to help them out, honestly, at this point.
The Standard headline this morning, tallow oil, the big lie. All right. So it's basically saying the company that promised Kenyans oil riches is in a financial mess. Saddled with huge debts, the troubled oil exporter is cutting down operations, sacking staff and seeking a suitor for what remains of the shell. The government is stranded with a dead dream and empty coffers. Pages 2, 3, 4 of the Standard this morning. It's looking back at what is it that's ailing tallow oil? Internationally, of course, we know the other time when the senior executives had to resign, had to quit because of the troubles that they have, and now they have had to restructure countrywide, internationally, globally. We'll be looking into this story in greater detail from 6 o'clock. But the other headline, of course, in the Standard is the DCI revisits Ruto's office and DOD to bust the 39 billion HSA network. This is another one of those stories.
It's interesting because there's a similar headline on the front page of The Nation. DCI tightens the noose on Ruto office. Of course, the fake 40 billion arms tender, explosive details emerge. The adjectives are fantastic. Details emerge of how Polish firm's directors fell for sophisticated criminal ring, also suspected to have used President Kenyatta's name to con businessman Morali of 10 million shillings last year. Did we talk about this yesterday? We talked about the fact that it was the same kind of con that we saw previously. But now details emerged that the firm directors fell for the sophisticated criminal ring, also suspected to have used President Kenyatta's name last year. So, of course, giving details into that on page 4 and 5, they talk about the fact that 14 officials from Harambee House Annex, the building that houses the office of the Deputy President, have been identified for questioning by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations as more explosive details about the 40 billion shilling fake arms deal continue to unravel. It includes a female MP from Central Kenya who was instrumental in convincing the directors of Eco Advanced Technologies LLC that they were in good hands and that they will clinch the deal. Moving on just swiftly, yesterday, detectives camped at both Harambee House Annex and at the Department of Defense headquarters at Ulinzi House. They were in the company of Mr. Mustafa Mamdo, a Director of Eco Advanced Technologies. The meeting between the MP and Mr. Stanley Kozlowski, the chief executive of the American firm, took place toward the end of October last year at the KICC on the sidelines of the Home Expo that was taking place. So, of course, giving many details into this, but more and more individuals start to turn up. Interestingly, Mr. Chesa was fired around the same time the 10 million shilling scam happened that Mr. Merali and the name of the president were involved with 10 million shillings.
You know, this story, basically, and the way it's unraveling, it points out to something. So the DOD, of course, issues a statement, says these people came and we have established that they did not meet with anybody who has authority to discuss procurement. But the DOD statement is not saying that these people did not come in. So these people actually accessed the DOD. They accessed an office in DOD. They were able to access whatever junior official there was in DOD. And then the same thing the ODP is saying. So if people can actually access such high security installations, the DOD, the President's office, State House, what exactly are we talking about in this country?
But then there's this angle. When you listen to most stories that deal with cons, they usually try to lend legitimacy to whatever plot they have by naming some big individual, some government connection. Because you see, they accessed DOD, but they didn't meet anyone who was of any consequence. They did, it is said, go to the DP's. So it is. It was reported. They did go to the DP's office to some boardroom and a meeting that lasted 23 minutes, according to some footage. But then, what does it mean that they actually? The people named in this story, for example, the DP, were actually involved in this? Or was this just to make them comfortable enough to have confidence in whatever they were being sold?
And it doesn't really matter.
Into?
The ifisms and the whataboutisms don't really matter. Or if these people came, they only spent 23 minutes here. If they came, they were not able to access, senior government officials. It doesn't matter. The point is, somebody can use your name, can access your office, can wear a uniform and go and sit in a city hotel and call themselves General Soel.
Yeah, because even the thing is, if they can do that, then we're looking at severe laxity in certain establishments in this country. Severe laxity. Complacency. And to ask yourself the question, because look, throughout this whole story, talking about the fact that they were granted VIP treatment, they were not subjected to any kind of security checks.
Yeah, because
they were given
walking around
full
with
treatment.
The minister.
Yeah.
So this is the question being, somebody with an ex-minister, he was no longer a minister. He was no longer a cabinet secretary. So the question arises, you can't.
They were facilitated clearly.
Exactly. Yes. You and I can't just walk into the annex and be given tea and coffee and say, please sit down and let's have a meeting.
There's a criminal network
Somebody facilitated. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Somebody facilitated this. There's someone in there who was doing something that they should not have been doing. And those are the questions that need to be asked.
Because we are told in the story, but to clinch the deal, they were told they needed two things: political and military connections. Mr. Echesa's role, courtesy of his deep links in Kenya's political circles, was to make sure the government plays ball. There you go.
Conmanship.
Yeah. But remember, it's not entirely conmanship. Not entirely. In the previous government, when President Kibaki was at the helm, we had a permanent secretary whose role was to oversee the ethics and the morality of the country. And he pointed a gentleman by the name of John Githongo, he pointed fingers directly at not just ministries, but individuals. It cost 2 ministers their job. There's one gentleman by the name of Murungaru. There's another one who followed, called Mwiraria. And remember the association that Mwiraria had. He was considered one of the closest friends that President Kibaki had. Then the case followed. Now, we will argue and say there is a network, and there probably is. But this was direct, a government official pointing fingers at other government officials directly. Githongo paid a heavy price for that, actually, if you remember correctly. But he pointed out. What seems to be true is that these networks, they don't really go anywhere. They just mutate.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
If we're talking about networks, remember, we've lost a minister in a really sensitive and executive ministry called Ministry of Finance, and the principal secretary out.
Yep.
And something similar. This time we're not buying arms. This time we're building dams. So this is a situation where you're being asked to believe something you obviously cannot see, and to believe that the amounts that have been mentioned and that were located in the budget weren't actually the same amounts that were being spent. Then you're given a figure, 7 million. That's really the figure that you should be looking at.
Only.
Yes.
Billion.
Yes, and then further revelations show, actually, it was a lot more than that. And there's a lot more now. This is an ongoing saga that we have. So even if we're going to point fingers, are we going to point fingers at individuals, or are we going to point fingers at a culture that has over time mutated in this country to the point where it's now a monster, a full-blown
We should point fingers
monster.
at both.
we should
Both,
point
yeah.
at both.
Individuals
because even the culture,
and the system.
The culture
Yeah.
is being propelled by individuals. At the end of the day, the culture is not static. It's being, perpetrated
yeah.
by individuals.
And that
over
what
time.
if is him, only is him, and what about him is what is perpetrating it. Saying only 23 minutes.
It's like saying only 7 billion.
Yeah. Only 23 minutes, only 7 billion, only accessed, just
boardroom.
a boardroom.
Didn't
Only
access the DP's office.
Didn't access. It doesn't matter.
I wasn't even there.
It happened.
Yes, was only at the
me.
reception.
It doesn't matter. 16 minutes after 6 o'clock, this is a Situation Room on Spice FM, and also multicasting on KTN News, KTN Morning Express. That's why we have Trix Ingado, Nduoko, Eric Latif, and Siti Muga. Let's take a look at the weather forecast for the day, and then we continue with the newspaper review. Good morning.
We're going to see mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi, currently at 17 degrees, and expected rain showers later on with highs of 26 and lows of 17. Taking a look at what's happening in Eldoret at 14 degrees, it's going to be a clear and sunny day with highs of 26 and lows of 12. In Nyeri at 16 degrees, it's going to be partly cloudy through the day. Expect rain later with highs of 26. And in Malindi, we're looking at 27 degrees currently, partly cloudy conditions through the day with highs of 32 rather. And in Kisumu, we're looking at 21 degrees, clear skies, partly cloudy conditions later with highs of 30 and lows of 19. Further afield in Kampala, 21 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions, rain expected later with highs of 28 and lows of 20. Taking a look at Dar es Salaam, where we see 27 degrees, a warm day, partly cloudy conditions, high of 33 and lows of 20. Further down south in Johannesburg at 19 degrees, periodic clouds with rain expected later, highs of 26 and lows of 16. Taking a look at what's going on in Lagos, highs of 36, hazy conditions, currently at 28 degrees with lows of 26. Taking a look in Europe at Paris, clear skies at 6 degrees, highs of 12 and lows of 6. In London, we're looking at 6 degrees as well, clear skies, rain expected later with highs of 11 and lows of 3. Finally, in New York at 6 degrees, clear skies, partly cloudy conditions to follow later with highs of 10 and lows of 2.
Good morning, you're watching Morning Express.
Mature,
and
intelligent
you are in
talk
the
every
studio.
morning.
This is on
Spice up
FM.
yourself.
Siti Mugandu Oko, Eric Latif, and me, Trix Ingado. And today we're taking a look at what's making headlines in the papers, and we were on that very scandalous story of Kenya's latest scandalous story that is cutting across all papers, having the Daily Nation telling us that DCI tightens the noose on Ruto's office, and then we have the Standard going with DCI revisits Ruto office and DOD to bust 39 billion in Chesa network. What do you make of this?
Well, I think, just looking at, it's interesting that the play on words on the Nation, for example, tighten the noose on Ruto's office, and just what we're talking about now, about having a culture of impunity. It's the office. There's certain things that were allowed to take place during this time. And that meant somebody opened the door, somebody allowed, there was some kind of laxity that was allowed to happen. Nobody was asking questions. If you're coming in and doing something that you should not be doing, nobody's asking you to be accountable, nobody's asking questions. And then we get something like this. It's a normal way of doing things, apparently.
Maybe
However,
not.
there are individuals who are allowing this to happen.
Maybe not. You see, remember, the DP's office is a public office. Start there. In theory, anyone can access it, in theory. But with most government offices, you want to go there, usually, if it's essentially a high security area, you need prior information, they need to book you in so people know that you are coming.
So somebody allowed it to happen.
Meaning it was planned. What I'm getting at is that, and it may not have been the first time this had happened, because from everything that you read, it's clear that, one, the former minister was known that he was not an unknown.
Yeah,
Of course.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it wasn't strange for him to actually go up that building. But he was a minister. It shouldn't be strange. Even if he's no longer a minister, it's still not strange because there's nothing that bars him from visiting those offices.
And nobody was going to ask the question, what were you doing here?
And he's a known ally of the DP.
Yes, even if he wasn't a known ally, the truth is, as a former minister, he would have, and it is recently, he would have easy access to not just that office, but any government office.
Yeah.
That is my view. Okay?
It's true.
The issue that we are discussing here is not even the people who accompanied him. No. Even DOD, even you today, if you know anyone of whatever rank who works at DOD and they are informed that you're coming, you can go into DOD.
Right.
Okay?
But then there was the absolute denial yesterday.
No.
We saw it in a statement.
No. The way it was written, they did not say that they didn't meet with anybody. What the paper report indicated was they did not meet with the people who were related directly to what...
To procurement.
Yes, that's what the newspaper stated. It didn't say they didn't come in. It didn't
That's
say
a
they didn't
statement
meet
by
anybody.
DOD spokesman
Yes.
Bogita Ongeri. So basically he's saying, yes, we have clearly seen that they came in, but they did not meet anybody who is involved in procurement
Yes.
of any military equipment or security equipment. But they clearly met somebody. And they clearly was facilitated to enter by somebody. And it's not the first time. We have seen other reports previously of somebody even going to DOD,
Even more
entering
bizarre.
an office, and an office has,
His
a
name
sign.
on the door.
Plus title,
Somebody-
Plus
plus
the
rank.
title of
And
somebody
you
who
enter and
does
you
not
find
exist.
somebody wearing military uniform.
Military uniform. Would you doubt?
Yeah.
Would you doubt?
Not only that, there's someone ushers you in. We're also wearing military uniform.
Yes.
How do you doubt? And you're in DOD.
Yeah. I mean-
That's conmanship, basically. And I would wonder, now that this came out, the DP, should he have come out and said it was only, why wouldn't just heads roll?
This is the only zim that I'm
You know?
talking about.
Yeah.
It-
Heads
He
should have
should
rolled.
have
Yeah.
said, I need to find out exactly what is going on. All this denying and saying I didn't, nobody asked you whether you did or didn't.
Yeah.
There are things that are going on within your office
Under your
that
nose.
clearly are suspect. You should have asked the question, or rather made the statement
Yep.
that I too am incensed by this,
Yes.
number one. Number two, I want to find out what is going on. And number three, I have ordered the investigation of such within my right to do so as the holder of this office. Not coming to deny things. Nobody accused you of anything. Come out and say very clearly,
This
I also don't know
happened.
what is
Yeah.
going on,
Yep.
which is all right. We're not going to call you weak for that. But to say that I didn't do anything when nobody asked and actually said that you did, now somebody wants to ask very many questions after what you've denied.
But
Right.
remember,
But at this point, say that I too need to find out what's going on. How
Remember-
on earth can such things be happening in my office?
if we pause for a second, you will find that the deputy president is in an unfortunate situation. Why I say so is because in this country, for the longest time, anything that appears to be negative seems to point towards the deputy president. Now, none of these things have gone to a court of law or have been proven to be true.
But
So they remain in the realm of allegations, albeit they're really rather many.
Right.
But give a dog a bad name. That's the phrase, isn't it? Okay. So because this individual has been accused so often, it seems to be the plausible thing that when one other accusation is leveled against him, people assume that it is true. I am not even talking about his denial. I'm not even going into that yet. The assumption seems to be he must be guilty. That, in my opinion, is a wrong assumption.
It is, but then it doesn't that point to the need for him to be quite
doesn't help
vocal in
by
handling
denying.
it,
Okay,
and being
right.
incensed.
Let's look at that.
Yeah.
Because an image taints.
Look at
Even in an exaggerated
look at the
way,
trail of comments that the DP has made every time these issues have come up. He hasn't deviated from the norm. He has not deviated. It's one of two things. Either why am I the one being targeted?
Or whatever he said is
Yes,
politics.
The response, and if you give it time, just give it time, we are going to be talking about the BBI, and suddenly the former Prime Minister will be at the head of it and what he wants to do. Meaning, his responses have acquired a pattern. You can almost predict how he is going to respond, but it still does not mean that he is guilty of what he's being accused of.
Of course
It's
not.
true,
But you know,
yeah.
the thing is, they always say that you tell your story first before somebody else has an opportunity to. Because then you have control over what the narrative that is out there.
And the definition of madness is saying that doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. He can't keep on handling this bad optics the same way. Perhaps this time he should actually find out who is letting these
Take
people
control of
in,
the
even if
reins for once.
they didn't know. Yeah, do something.
Trixie, you are aware that you
Yeah.
have brought into question the mental capability.
No. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm saying if he needs to break the cycle of him, that question that he's asking, why always me, then he needs to do something different, react differently.
So that it isn't always him.
Yes, so that people can actually think twice before they're pushing these narratives in his direction or using his name to gain whatever publicity or whatever agenda they're trying to further.
In African folklore,
Yeah.
there were certain animals that had the unfortunate position of always being the villain. Okay? There were other animals that were considered to be the clever ones.
Yeah.
There were the other ones who were considered slow, but they were juxtaposed with wisdom.
Wise.
All right? Now, if in Kenyan politics, a narrative has taken root, and that narrative has characterized you as a certain person, it is a very, very difficult task to move
go
away.
ahead.
To shake
move
it, it's
away
gonna
from
be
that
very
from that characterization.
Yeah, it will
Yes.
be hard, which, of course, then of course it will be hard, but there are very few things in this world that are very easy to have done. And I think if he's really serious about shaking this off, there's certain things that he could do. All right. Speaking of shame and other things, you need to look at really what's happening with the Kisumu Water and Sewerage Company.
The lack of poison.
Right. This is a bit worrying because Kiwasco, as it's known, lacks the capacity to clean the toxic waste it receives daily. And get this, it is pumping at least 7 dangerous chemicals into Lake Victoria, then drawing water from another section of the lake, which it then purifies for supplies to town residents.
Disgusting.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually quite nasty to look at this and to see exactly what is going on in terms of what the residents of Kisumu are ingesting. And of course, going into to serious detail about what's going on there. But something to note is that the effluent discharge point is carefully hidden deep inside a thicket, about 200 meters away from busy Kisumu-Busia Highway. And it took more than an hour walking in circles along the stream to find it all around our tiny farms, mind you, growing vegetables, all right? From vegetables, of course, to napier grass. It looks very nice on the surface. But below is actually a cesspool of disease.
Yeah.
1,800 in terms of numbers is the total E. coli and chloroforms that they've found present in a 100 milliliter sample of lake water. There could be more because the gauge could only reach 1,800, and it could be more, it could be much higher.
This is an interesting story.
60 times.
This is an alarming story.
Yes,
Yeah.
60
And
times.
I like the fact that Nation actually went all out and said, let's do a long series on this.
Right.
It took time. When such a headline takes, such a story takes the headlines, it's a good thing.
Well, look at this now.
We're not
60
running
times
away from the politics.
are the times above. This is 60 times above what is allowed by NEMA. This is the same level found in raw sewage. Clean water should have 0 E. coli, while a total of chloroforms should not be more than 30 in every 100 mils of water. And in this, they found 1,800. And this is the same water. They might tell you that it's from a different part of the lake, but if you want to apply logic, all of this is mixing.
Yeah.
All right? But they take water from a different part of the lake, purify it, and then supply this to the residents of Kisumu.
Yeah, and the story...
Then we're asking ourselves questions about
About
disease.
cancer.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Pause for a single second and ask yourself what it is that lives in this water.
Fish.
And
What
it is-
doesn't, at this point, what doesn't live in this water?
Actually, I was referring to fish. And the fish directly ingest everything that you have said. What you will find, whether it's minerals or
Metals.
whatever, you will find that everything that the University of Nairobi, the microbiology department were involved in this process for the longest time. What you will find is that everything that they found was way above the accepted levels. When I say way above, it's like the accepted level may be 0.2 and what they find is 46%. So now you actually wonder, how many times over can this thing kill you?
I mean, seriously.
And we were told from yesterday's story that 12 species of fish that were originally found in the lake have disappeared. Only the Nile perch has been able to adapt
To survive this poison.
to adapt to the metals and the pollution, which is ingesting, and therefore that means we are all ingesting. And you know how Kenyans are like, fish from the lake is the best. We don't we avoid the fish pond fish
what we
because
want.
it does not have flavor. So we are all ingesting this type of this fish, these metals. And I was speaking to Joe Mutambo, who heads the Water Resources Authority yesterday, and he did say every time he goes down there and he tries to close down some of these organizations and people who are polluting the lakes, they go to the courts, and after a day this decision is overturned and they are opened up again. So even the authorities that are mandated with making sure that this stops, and
Those are
unable
good
to.
excuses that the Water Resources Authority comes
what
up with.
can they do?
Oh,
Well, I mean, maybe
they have got
one
the
thing that we
powers.
can do is make
They've
it
got
very
the law
clear.
behind them.
They have the law.
What
they
they
could,
people
if
do
they really
is-
wanted
But it's
to.
the same laws that overturns
No,
their
they
decisions.
the officials themselves circumvent the law. They go into very many of these places basically looking for, and I'm going to say this openly, looking for handouts and looking for bribes.
I think we need to be very
They come
clear.
in there, they're saying, we are the Water Resources Authority, this is what you've done, and can you see us, or we take you to court. Taking drastic
Ili
actions.
tumalize hii mambo.
Yes. So when Water Resource Authority comes and tells us, people go to court. Look, you've got the mandate, you've got the law behind you. If you're following the law, nobody will go to court. No court will uphold a bad decision.
It's interesting to note that, however, just as we go to break, is that this can explain in part why respiratory diseases have overtaken malaria as the deadliest diseases in Nyanza. And these are also far too many. There are also far too many people battling diseases like cancer.
Maybe look at the picture on the top page. I mean, what is that even?
It's a very scary story. This is the situation on Kenya's biggest conversation. Also multicasting on KTN News and www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as our social media handles, SpiceFMKE on Facebook and SpiceFMKE on Twitter. This is the first and only 24/7 audio-visual radio station. We have Trix Ngado from KTN News. Let's take a look at the traffic and then the conversation continues.
All right, Tuesday morning, let's see if it's any different from what we saw yesterday. In Wayaki Way, the traffic has started at Uthiru Junction to Kabete. It's moving, however, it's moving quite slowly right now. Of course, the Red Hill bypass is an option to use this morning. Wayaki Way, then down towards the Westlands roundabout, is moving, but moving quite slowly. Langata Road traffic has started really quite far up today, right around the junction that connects with going towards Rongai. Let's see what that looks like in a short while. Mombasa Road near GM moving very slowly, but moving all the same. Far back then towards Cabanas, in and outbound today. For some reason there is traffic coming off of Thika Road. Of course, it's snaking all the way back to Safari Park Hotel, and then that's inbound to town. Of course, getting around the Utali Drift, some traffic to be experienced. Of course, Muthaiga heading to town, a little bit of traffic there as well. This is the time when it's all opening up. In about an hour or so, we'll be right in the middle of traffic hour. We'll let you know what it looks like there. Give us a call, 0719-012-600, or send us a shout on Twitter, SpiceFMKE. Let us know what you see.
You're watching Morning Express or listening to Spice FM or both on either of our platforms, and we're having the Situation Room going on right here with Ndu Oko, City Mugas, Eric Latif and myself, Trix Ingado. Today we are taking a look at some of the top stories, which include the Lake of Poison, which is a series that has been running on the Daily Nation, and today they're telling us more about the polluters and who are getting away with murder. And one of the big polluters, as we have been told in this series, is a prison in Kodiaga that literally drains its effluence into the lake, which is where we get our fish, which raw. Yep. And I'm told that this is not something that happens just at the Lake Victoria, even at the coast. Most restaurants, most of these 5-star whatevers are draining into the ocean. So what we are seeing as this beautiful ocean, we're told that you would never go to the beach and take a swim in the Indian Ocean if you knew half of the stuff that winds up in there.
That they do.
Yeah. So you might want to rethink.
And here we are talking about NEMA saying, we can't go to court. Come on.
You know, it's a sad story, but lest we forget that our government and government agencies and departments are peopled and populated by Kenyans. So
humans walking,
Kenyans,
thinking, talking.
Yes, Kenyans. And the unfortunate thing is that this ministry of impunity that we keep speaking of seems to not only be influencing other ministries, but it has taken center stage. It is the voice that seems to be heard in almost every department and almost every sector of not just the economy, but within the government. Why the government is sensitive is because that is where all our services and all the things that we hope to do for the country, that's where they're centered. That's the engine. That's where things are supposed to work. That's where the country is supposed to be built. And if this is a situation that we're talking about, woe betide us.
Other headlines before we look at the top story. Court bars vetting of Sonko pick for deputy. So the High Court has barred the Nairobi County Assembly from vetting Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko's deputy governor nominee, Anne Kananu. This is because somebody had gone to court saying Sonko is violating the court order. Court order that has barred him from accessing office or from interfering with witnesses. And he says, nominating somebody into that office is akin to violating those court orders. So Justice Mombingogi has said, wait, so let me hear this first. MCAs, please do not vet Anne Kananu.
Well, remember that particular ruling, there was the debate around it still actually rages on. When that ruling was made, what did they mean?
Exactly. And I think, I'm not really sure what the protocol is when we look at the justice system or judges then sending out information about what they meant. Of course, I think there can be a lot of lobbying to ask, can you please interpret this so that it can be very, very clear? It could be that the subjects understand exactly what the ruling was and choose to flout it, or that they really, really don't know how far they can reach with this. But I think some clarity is needed, because we actually have, coming out of the office of the DPP, that he himself was not very clear what this meant.
What exactly?
We keep taking ourselves back and forth. Nominate, don't nominate. Where are we?
What clarification does anyone need? I mean, the whole sense of it was that if you're found to be under investigation and there needs to be time for that to happen, you need to step away so that you do not influence the investigation or whatever is happening. Because it's I picture it as a murder scene that has been cordoned off. Nobody.
So to you, it's clear cut.
Yeah, it's clear cut.
But therein lies the debate.
If you're my best friend and I'm being investigated and you're in charge of this studio, and then I say now, because I'm not there, take over, what's going to prevent me from using you to influence or to avert justice or whatever?
But understand that in the same breath, the same court says he does not cease to be governor. In this example.
Yeah.
He's still
This
governor.
means
He's
there's
still
no
governor.
need for a new election for a new governor. We still have a governor who has been benched as we investigate. So
That's
I
the
think
tricky
it's
bit.
clear.
Because
The bit is that
the court
they
cannot
sack him
ungovern you.
because they did not elect him.
He still
The
is.
only way you can be ungoverned is by going to the Senate.
Yeah.
That's the court that can ungovern you.
MCAs
MCAs.
basically impeaching
yes.
you, and then the Senate
And then
agrees.
It's a political process.
Yes.
It's not a judicial process. Not really.
Or
Yeah,
also the
yeah.
judicial process if you're jailed for longer than 6 months.
Right.
The entire process goes through and you're convicted and jailed for more than 6 months. Then
If
we're
you are
in jail.
brought into the judicial system through jailing then of course the judicial system takes precedence.
Yep.
There's really no
I think
harm.
it's really direct.
No. There's no harm in being clear. There's no harm
We need
with
clarity
clarity.
on that issue.
With
Yeah,
clarity in
guys.
this case.
No.
Wewe ni governor,
The way it's
huwezi
clear-
fanya kazi mpaka tumalize.
Wewe ni
hii
governor,
kesi. Yeah, hii kesi.
Ulichaguliwa
you
na
are
watu.
to-
Sasa ungoje tu
the
kidogo.
court cannot overturn the will of the people. They elected this person, not directly.
Overturning
The
would mean
circumstances-
chucking you
but that-
completely.
yes.
Yeah.
So, look,
So we haven't done that. We've told you just sit.
if for example now you need any law that is passed by the county assembly to become law, it needs to be signed by the governor. Are you saying that the governor cannot sign in new laws?
He can.
Because you've told him he's
Because
still
you've told
governor.
him to.
You've told him he's still governor.
Yeah.
But you said that
Clarity is required here.
it is necessary at this point to say
What we're
to
introducing
make it
is
clear,
the
like you're
debate
making it clear to
that
a child.
exists
Yeah.
in this space. And that's why this clarity is being called for.
And anybody can then now say, because it's not clear, I thought I could do one, two, or the other thing.
Yep.
And that's why I did it. Now, unless you come and tell me that, what we are saying is, these 20 things, you cannot do them. These 5 spaces, you may not operate within them. These 10 people, you may not speak. It really needs to be very clear, because then you have individuals like Mike Mbuvi Sonko who's going to say, well, I didn't know. It wasn't clear to me. I thought I could still go ahead and do this.
I have nominated new people to get into the CECs. I have nominated somebody to become deputy governor. Speaking of deputy governor, there's a case that had been lodged in Nyeri against the appointment of Caroline Karogo as deputy governor of Nyeri. All right. And somebody who had gone to court saying that this was before the law that was passed by the Senate had actually been passed on how to appoint a deputy governor. But then the court said, look, Dr. Karogo was appointed in accordance with the law as provided by the Supreme Court's advisory opinion on March 9th, 2018. So Dr. Karogo is in office legally. Officials' illegal contract change may cost 3.7 billion shillings. We can only lose 3.7 billion shillings in a case here. Managed equipment services. So there's this Senate committee that has been hearing this issue of the managed equipment services and the scandal around it. Last week, we saw the Solicitor General appearing before them and saying the Attorney General was not aware of some of these contract details. Now we've seen the CS for Health on page 8 of the Standard meeting the committee again yesterday and saying there was a contract here with a certain company that was negotiated after the contract has already been awarded. It was being negotiated, and it says if you cancel this contract, you'll have to pay 80% of the contract amount. So if you can't cancel the contract, which is about 4.9 billion shillings, we have to pay the contractor 3.7 billion just because of cancelling a contract. Yet the contract itself was unprocedural and all, and the Attorney General has said, this contract was wrong. It's skewed against the government.
And essentially,
Criminal
they're
enterprise.
also
Yeah.
saying that the company that's at the center of this, 7 Cs, stood to benefit.
Yeah.
Not just benefit. The government seemed to benefit absolutely nothing, and they seem to benefit
The company more.
This is why I always ask
It's
when
crazy.
when we are making these deals, do we not have lawyers, experts who
We do.
can dig through, find with a fine tooth
We have
comb?
the Office of the Attorney
Yeah.
General
Yeah.
that is required
That's
to
their-
basically
Yes.
that's their
give
job.
advice to the government. Now, if the Office of the Attorney General is not
Yeah.
involved, so the
How
AG
can
comes
they
and
give
says
advice?
later.
we do, but somehow we're only always appearing to be on the losing end
Yep.
every single time. And there's a multinational. I can't blame them because they're looking for something. They're not engaging us for nothing.
No,
you
we
know?
must blame
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Why?
Why we must blame them is if you're a business entity and we do understand that you're there to make profit,
Yes.
it is stupid and short-sighted if you engage in a deal that will expose you as not only being greedy, but having absolutely you must pretend to have interest in the people
Why?
you do business with.
You're looking for money.
Yes,
it's
you
business.
must. Do you hear how nations make statements about the help, the aid, the progress and the development that they're bringing?
Pharmaceuticals.
All
They
in the
don't
name
care.
of profit. That's what I'm saying. You must pretend. These fellows
You cannot basically go and
No.
negotiate a contract
that
that
only benefits
favors you.
No, predominantly.
But also
Silly.
CT.
If
yes,
I was seated at a boardroom and I was sitting here representing Spice FM, let's say, and I'm supposed to, our goal is to make money.
You'll get the
and
best
I
deal.
notice that you're making 1 shilling, yet I'm making 100. I'm not going to speak out. I'm going to sign the damn thing because it's your fault for not making sure.
And you will lose
True.
that
Yeah.
job
And
very
you lose.
soon after
True.
that.
But
Yeah.
also CT, the government officials who are colluding in allowing this to happen.
It's
should
the
also
collusion
brought to
factor
book.
that I'm trying to lean towards,
see,
because we always seem to
Because
be
the private enterprise is there. I mean,
it's their job to care for us.
I squeeze as much as I can out of this deal.
Actually, if
And then you, as the government, you should be able to ensure that you're squeezing as much as possible.
It's not my
this.
job to care for your people.
it is actually. If these are people you're doing, okay, let me give you an example,
Biashara,
perhaps.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why antiretrovirals work so well is that over time, they don't just expand or increase your lifespan by a few years. You can live for as long as your creator intended you to live. All right? So it begs the question, these pharmaceutical companies, do they have the capacity to actually find a cure? That's where your question comes in. Are they in the business of curing people or making money?
Making money.
Yes, you are better off, whether it's diabetes, these conditions that are lifelong.
Yes.
If someone can provide you with something that ensures you live close to well life and you live for a long time, it is a wonderful thing. That's what I mean. That's their corporate social responsibility. They don't just keep you well, but they keep you really well. But you are also a client for life.
Yeah,
but
then that's why there are countries such as India and China who decide, you know what, we're going to make our own medicine that serves our own people. Because when we collaborate with certain entities, they're profiting off of us being
But they do the same thing.
They're doing the exact same
but
thing.
at least the margins
I'll
are
be raising
different.
this
I'm
issue
sure
later
the
in the
margins
show.
are different.
They do
I'll
the
be
same
saying-
thing.
But they're different, I'm sure.
Looking at how these
They're
kind of deals
definitely
are
the
being
same.
signed.
Yes.
Looking at how these kind of deals are being signed, this particular one, medical equipment deal, looking at another one where we are seeing 6 billion shillings prison bills are illegal according to an audit that has been done 3 times. Now it's being subjected to a 4th audit because people are saying, no, we supplied and the government has not paid us. And the government is saying, we are auditing your bills or your invoices. And we are saying, look, what you're presenting here is not the situation on the ground. 3-4 times. This kind of deals and the kind of, shenanigans that we are seeing in government, I'll be raising that later. This is the Situation Room. It's 13 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're broadcasting, of course, on Spice FM in Nairobi, 94.4, Mombasa, 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, and Malindi, 97.7. We also stream live on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter at Spice FM KE, as well as our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. This morning, we're also on KTN News Morning Express. Good morning.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
How are you?
Breathing life
Welcome back.
into the
This is
80s.
Morning Express. My name is Trix Ingado. You're listening to
94.4 Spice
Morning Express,
FM,
or both on
Nairobi.
various platforms. And today we're taking a look at the
Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
This morning, and that has
Spice
been
up
covered
yourself.
The big one, as the Standard has put it. It was Black
Mornings
Gold Hoax, the
done
company
right.
that promised Kenyans oil
94.4
riches is in a
Spice
financial
FM,
mess.
Nairobi.
Saddled with a huge debt, the troubled oil explorer is cutting down operations, sacking staff, and sending a suitor for the remains of the shell.
May I
The-
ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yes.
forgive me for interrupting you. Is there oil?
Apparently, according to the reports.
Okay, so that headline is a little misleading, if I
True.
may say so.
Yes.
Because if there was no oil, then it would be a lie.
A lie. There is oil.
What seems to be the problem here is that this particular company has financial issues and it seems to be impacting on what they promised to do.
But City, how will we sell the paper if we just
No,
say
not
we
even that. No.
we explain it plainly like that?
Look. There could also be an issue of a lie. Do we have enough that can be exported? If we had enough that could be exported, why haven't we exported?
But at,
Why haven't we
at a
exported
glance,
lots?
when you read this,
Because you're saying
yeah.
almost 9 years after the country announced its big find, hopes of becoming an oil exporter are fast fizzling out as Kenyans wake up to the reality that they may have been taken for a ride by a global adventurer. Basically, what this story is saying, look, Tullow came and told us, oh, yes, you guys, we have found Gamia 1 has some good oil, and Gamia 2, we have some oil that we can export, we can extract and export. So many years down the road, nothing is happening of that sort. Yeah, we still have now that Tullow itself having problems internationally, financial problems. It was banking on Kenya and Uganda as being the big players in the lucrative oil industry. A year later, these prospects have dimmed on the back of Tullow's unproductive business deals. It's believed that the firm is planning to sell its stake in Kenya. One of the rumored buyers was Total, but its chief executive, Patrick Poyan, last week shut down the speculation that they were buying this, saying, stop dreaming. No.
But in 2012, we were told by the then Minister for Energy with great clarity that the oil that we had in this country, of the depths, the quantities were distinctly more than what was in Uganda. So are we saying that we were lied to?
That's what this story is basically saying.
No, this story
We were
isn't
taken
saying
for a
that.
ride.
But
I think taking.
the
I
story
think
isn't
In
saying
fact,
that.
the being taken for a ride is talking about the capacity that Tullow has to
For
carry
actually
out
doing
these
this job.
exercises.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right?
it's not the
It's not
existence
about
of...
the existence of reserves in the
But
country.
by the way...
And if you look at this, it's not talking about Kenya oil or Turkana oil. It's saying Tullow
Tullow
oil.
oil.
It's
The
talking
big
about
lie is the lie that the
Tullow oil.
company
the company itself,
could have lied.
not the oil.
It's not that we
in
don't
this
have
country.
oil in the country.
No.
It's not all that. It's about the company's capacity to actually be able to extract and export our oil.
But is that what they present really? If that is now a clever interpretation that actually points to where the problem is, but is that what we have presented in the paper?
In fact, there's a section that says, for 3 decades, Tullow has been more than just an oil explorer. It has been an alchemist of sorts, a biblical David that has outwitted many Goliaths by turning impossibilities into possibilities, where oil and gas behemoths such as Shell, BP, Exxon, Total and Chevron only found traces of oil in Turkana. The British explorer found relatively high deposits of the mineral. The oil find, said Tullow, could be monetized, catapulting Kenya into the league of oil exporting countries. So if they're talking about a track record that has beat any of these other other companies, it would give the impression that they have found it, and that they can now make us the next Nigeria.
And then the story continues to say, but now some experts have cast doubt on the size of the country's oil reserves, and the poor global prices of the commodity have added to the gloom. Further, the government and Tullow are yet to decide on how commercial oil production will proceed. There is also no infrastructure for evacuation oil on a large-scale basis, and the project is not backed by a vision on how this new oil wealth can be realized. So this whole program, apart from just the excitement that, oh, Ngamia 1 oil, that was it. Everything else beyond that has no clear plan, appears to have no clear plan, appears not to have the capacity to even extract this oil, appears not to have... We are not benefiting from it.
It's just taking me back to my previous argument of when we are making deals with foreign and multinational organizations, why is it that we're always on the losing end? Don't we have professionals who can actually verify that why does someone have to come from outside and tell us, here is a deal that will make you rich, and then a few months down the line being told, no, there's a way that this thing is not going to work like we anticipated.
Due diligence.
Seems like, we don't
due diligence.
do it. Yeah.
Actually, we're quite lacking in matters of due diligence, because I keep saying, and I been to different countries and seeing what they're able to implement. The number of blueprints that come out of this country, Kenya, is unbelievable. Just the other day, we saw the story of Konza City and how Ethiopia basically took this same blueprint.
Suppose we gave them... Yes, please.
They took it, ran with it, did the same thing in the country, and are now benefiting from it.
Yeah.
And here we are with our fingers up our noses and still not able to do the same thing
with
for
the
an
blueprints.
idea with the blueprint.
And
an
Konza,
idea that
and
you
report the
give to
land.
somebody else. I don't understand. Here we are, a company that has come into this country telling you that we're able to do 1, 2, 3. It's not a matter of did they find oil or not. That was not the bone of contention. Here it was that they said we're able to do this. The due diligence that was necessary to be taken at that point. Then to say, all right, where have you worked in the world previously? What have you been able to do? Can we take a look at your books, for example, and see if you have the capacity to do this for us? Because I went to Turkana and I saw the people in Turkana looking at livelihoods for the next 20 years that they were going to be able to bank on. Civil society organizations had camped in Turkana already. The people,
Really?
yes, the people in the towns, surrounding towns, were ready for a new life.
Lodwar has
because
grown.
they were looking at how they were going to be able to benefit from this resource. People's lives for the next 20 years had been planned out. All
Months
right?
later, they're still smuggling crude oil across the border in
but
jerry
listen,
cans.
listen,
Yeah.
Tullow Oil has 150 licenses in across 25 countries.
So there's no reason for you to doubt.
No. These are just statistics. And with 76 producing fields, that is in 2012. This company comes from Ireland. By the way, it even has a primary listing in the London Stock Exchange. Okay? Net worth of the company is in the region of 2.75 billion. Now, what this tells you, if it's in the London Stock Exchange, eco shareholders mingi ndogo ndogo.
Yes.
Okay? Now, that we have a problem with this oil. Again, there's nothing that has been written here that indicates to me that we do not have
That's
oil.
not the
I think
problem.
we
That's
do.
not
Not the
the
issue.
contention at
Yes.
all. That's not the problem.
So,
Even the editorial on the Standard says, although the country has earned nearly 1.2 billion through the early oil pilot scheme into 2,004,000 barrels, no one knows exactly when commercial production will begin. The government and Tullow have different timelines. The government thinks it will be in 18 months after a final investment decision has been made. This, according to the government, is the time it will take to construct a crude pipeline from Lokichar to Lamu. But Tullow says it will take 3 years to complete the pipeline. Basically, what this story is doing today, and plus the editorial on the Standard, is saying, look, we have had oil for all these years. Now we are seeing Tullow, the company itself, having serious financial issues globally, and we seem not to have a clear plan with the government and this company.
And there needs to be
When
provision.
are we going to start benefiting from this oil?
In
That
case
is what is
in
being
case you
raised.
don't deliver in a certain timeline, then we need to shift tact and do something different when it comes to you serving us in the way that you promised when this deal was struck. And I have listened to a TED talk that actually got me thinking, because I wish I had noted down the name of this woman, because she said when she was sitting on the other side, the multinationals, on several negotiations with the foreign African government officials, she says that when you go into the room, you're an African, but you're sitting on the other side. First of all, the officials are extremely intimidated by the fact that these people are even just of a different skin color, second of all. And when you talk to some of these people who go to strike deals with African nations, many of them say they prefer Africa, because there's no pushback. When you go to Asia with your blueprints that are having a 20-80, disproportionate ratio of profit, they tell you go back, rethink this and write it again. So they will send you back over and over again. But when it comes to Africa,
Just
we are
take
really
anything.
happy. We're like,
Take
yes,
anything.
we
Just
sign,
give
we
11
sign, we
million
sign.
on the side.
We're so intimidated.
And you get the
here,
contract.
So we need to rethink how we do this. It's not you can't just be pointing fingers at other companies. We need to be doing it ourselves.
The arrangement isn't just signed.
Yeah.
This is where that ministry we keep speaking of comes into preeminence. People sign because they are promised something, and usually there is a prepayment.
And
The World Bank calls what we're talking is a pre-resource curse, meaning, but it bedevils predominantly African countries, where we get into a venture that is in the making.
Yeah.
We invest, and the net result usually is that you are faced with a situation where your partner is more likely to exit rather than to stay.
Trix, thank you very much for joining us this
Thank you
morning
for
on the
having me.
Morning Express. Thank you very much to your audience as well on KTN Morning Express. Keep it right here on Spice FM, because we'll be discussing the issue of scandals in government. We'll be talking about the U.S. Secretary of State is visiting Africa, and Nduwoko will be telling us what she thinks about those kind of visits. Trix Ngaro, we hope to see you again tomorrow on KTN Morning Express and
See
Spice
you
FM.
next
Good morning.
time.
7 o'clock.
All right, looking Looking at Valley Road now, right in the CBD, all the way towards Uhuru Highway, and then moving then in the direction of Mombasa Road, and then also towards Westlands. In and outbound to the city centre is actually quite jam-packed this morning. It's normal traffic on Thika Road from Roysambu towards the CBD, and that means that it's snaking along quite slowly, but it's moving all the same. Mombasa Road, of course, we see the normal issues that we had, and that we probably will have for some time now, and that's leading us all the way then past Bellevue and then all the way down towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. So that's normal for now. Also looking at the southern and eastern bypasses as an option for you. We see that Langata Road is a bit slow, but it's moving then towards the T-Mall roundabout. So everything is kind of normal for a Tuesday morning, but we see that it's moving this morning at least. We don't have any gridlock situations as yet. If you see one or if you're aware of one, Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know what you see. We're trying to keep moving, Trying to keep moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice,
Malindi,
communications expert, Pan-African.
Nyeri 90.9, Eldoret 96.7, 96.0 in Nakuru, 102.5 in Kisumu, 87.9 in Mombasa, 94.4 in Nairobi, as well as worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke, Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, as well as our Instagram handle. So, let's talk about democracy, shall we, City?
Let's actually talk about democracy, Eric. This is one of the most famous, popular, and, well, most distinguishedly used terminology when one is talking about forms of government. One often thinks that because America promotes itself as not only the founders of democracy, but also the bedrock of democracy, one doesn't actually look at the details. There are those who claim that democracy originated in Greek, no less. And there are others who say, actually, to be honest, it didn't actually originate in Greece. They say that it actually originated in a place called Malal in India. Now, this debate can go on and on, but that's not really the subject of my discourse this morning. Democracy, by its very existence, is actually theoretical. And I think every nation on the planet that calls itself democratic tries to attain or try to get to the point where they can claim to have attained full democracy. There's what you call direct democracy. There's what you call representative democracy. Most countries have representative democracies. Of interest, if you look at the listing, the democracy index that is given every year, 2017, the top 5 countries that came in that list were Nordic countries. America doesn't even feature. But of interest is this. African countries in the last century and this one, when upon attainment of independence, have claimed in one form or the other to be democratic. But the Kenyan space and our democracy, as we know it, was best framed when we promulgated the new constitution, and it's found in chapter 4. But this chapter 4, by its very, very existence, indicates that whatever we have in terms of freedoms and rights should be enjoyed by every citizenry. But what distinguishes Kenya from many other countries is that Kenya seems to have understood democracy to be the practice where those in power, whether political or in government, it's the permission and the ability for them to ensure that they disadvantage the citizenry who have entrusted them with leadership and direction to the very nth. Every possible degree that they can take advantage of the citizenry is utilized. Our papers are full of this. This is my position. Kenya has very many positive things that they've achieved because of democracy. Open space, the ability for people to actually genuinely speak their minds without fear of being incarcerated. And I'm talking about the present time in which we live in. The ability to actually read information that may not necessarily be complementary to the government. But if we are to move forward as a nation that actually strives to attain the tenets of democracy as is understood, then we must take a backseat and understand that the rule of law, as it is enshrined in our constitution, applies to everyone. And just like we can jail a chicken thief, we should also be able to jail the highest ranking government official should they be found culpable of doing wrong.
So you're writing on what we've been seeing on social media.
I'm
Guilty
writing-
until proven rich. Have you seen that campaign running on
No,
social media?
I am not very strong on social media, but
So this is what has been happening. So there are these people who are producing these short snippets and telling stories of guilty until proven rich, showing how the high and mighty. Somebody is caught with a python on a ferry in the coast, and Gafla bin Hu, they've already been jailed for 4 years, right?
Gafla what?
Bin Hu.
Punde si
Punde
punde.
si punde.
Got it. All right.
You get that one?
Before punde has become punde,
They're already in jail.
Full
Yet,
scholarship.
when we have some senior government officials who are taken to court over, criminal offences like
of a very
murder.
serious magnitude.
Yes, like murder, or like, corruption involving billions of shillings. Cases take forever. NYS 1, NYS 2. We have all these Aror Kimwader. We have somebody shooting, being charged with shooting somebody else in a nightclub. They're out on bail. The case is yet to commence. But yet,
And the
when a
individual
small
who informed is
person-
now paralyzed.
Yes. But when a small person is caught on, petty crime, that case is accelerated.
One of the tenets of a true democracy can only actually be envisioned probably in one country on this planet, and that is Switzerland. And this is where the citizens had more power than even the leaders. Meaning, in a representative democracy such as ours, when people utilize the democracy as our citizenry do, remember, leaders are also citizens. They have more power than those who actually have given them the power.
And it should not be.
Oh, no. That is precisely what it mustn't be. And whenever they give the impression that they have involved the people, it comes in the form of a decision having been made, and then the decision is passed on and the citizen is informed of the decision that has been made. And then they will call it public participation. Well, in effect, it's actually a rally.
This one doesn't even need, as you say, big English to kind of unravel it. It doesn't require in this case. Because we were told about the fact that, there's a back. If you just want to look at the courts, for example, we've been told over and over and over again that the reason why they have not been able to expedite such cases is one of the big ones we've heard about is for lack of evidence, for lack of capacity, because, there's a backlog, right? That's one of the reasons. So to make it sound as simple as possible, just this one case that we are talking about, how is it that this case would have been, within 2 weeks, they found this fellow, arrested him, took him to court, had a trial, convicted him, and he's in jail. All of this happened in 10 days. Why then is it that the same expediency cannot be applied when we have other cases? How many cases do we can't count? We've just given a number of them now. How many cases do we have?
Somebody
and
will
people
argue.
are still
This one
asking
is-
questions.
some cases
and the
are
amount of
straightforward.
the amount of money that is missing could turn around this economy. Tell me what a python is going to do for Kenya.
Think of it this way. If you look at chapter 4, again, we're talking because this is a very fundamental part of our democracy. It's a bill of rights, isn't it? It applies to all laws, by the way, all. Not some, chosen, select, all. It binds all state organs and persons. So meaning no one is exempt. And secondly, every person shall enjoy their rights and these fundamentals enshrined in here. Now, the application of it, as we see, if I look at the third point that I made, not everybody enjoys these rights and fundamentals.
No, and
If you can go hungry, and yet in that same breath, you are being told, one, we had more rain than we knew what to do. Then we know that rain, well managed, is actually the engine that drives off the food production. You are told in advance that you are going to have an invasion of locusts who I'm told have reached the 1B number. Okay? Now you then have a minister telling you the yellow ones, those are the old ones. These ones,
Fear not.
Fear not. These ones don't really eat much. You know how old people don't really eat much.
They don't really move around much either.
That science is interesting. But nonetheless, you then have a situation where you're being told we have a famine. It may not appear like people's rights are being abrogated, but they are. One of the fundamental rights that we have is to actually not just access medical care, but even food. It's a right. It's a basic right. Now, the moment something isn't done, it's being denied. Look at Lake Victoria. We are not just denying people, we are poisoning them. We are poisoning them directly because of the water. Remember, the people who actually take that water, boil it, and they think it is safe. Some of those minerals cannot be boiled away. But we're even poisoning the food that they eat. Now, this is where these are aspects of our democracy which will not only taint, but it will, if I may use a Kenyan term, it will rubbish any other gain that we may have made in the space of democracy. Simply because when you look at what else is being done, you wonder, goodness gracious me, will we actually survive as a nation? Will the people, forget the nation as an entity, will the people actually survive?
So when you say the rule of law should apply to all, basically,
All.
yeah, it's raising those issues that we currently keep seeing. We are seeing now, there's a case that's being brought to court against a former cabinet minister and some people, and they're being accused of participating in fraud. And they're out on a 1 million shillings bail. Investigations commence. I can bet you that this case is going nowhere. By end of this year, we'll still be having issues, pending on this particular case. Nobody will be in jail, or the case will not be concluded by the end of this year. Yet, we talk about other people who, and that's what I think that even those people who are pushing that agenda on social media are saying, when you see other people who, if you look back at the amount of money we're talking about and what it could do, if you're saying that the government was about to, sign off a 30 billion shillings deal, say this is a con. So we have the case of the managed equipment services in the Ministry of Health. 43 billion shillings has actually been signed off, and we could lose 37 billion shillings to a contractor because of how it was done. If these people are taken to court, that case will take forever to move. Before it begins, before it concludes, it will take forever. It's a case where democracy does not apply. The rule of law does not apply to everybody equally.
What is of interest, if we were to draw parallels, right? Some of the positive aspects of our democracy, I think one of the ones which stands out for me was the Supreme Court ruling in the general election that we had in 2017. At that point in time, Kenya was just among the 3 countries in the world where such a ruling had actually taken place. Third, Malawi has joined us. So now there are 4 countries in the entire world. Now, if you were to look at this, you'd say, this is really good. You have a court of law, or you have a judicial system that seems to be able to do things which are considered difficult. But then, unfortunately, we just pause there. Yes, we do pause there. Now, that one is stuck in history. If you then look at what involves or what pertains to the day-to-day livelihood of the citizenry, then the longer a case takes, the more it costs the so-called taxpayer.
And they know this, right? This is the thing.
Yes, they do.
Because they want to talk about bottlenecks. They want to talk about, things that stop them from essentially doing their job. And one of the biggest things that we keep hearing time and time again is money. There's no money. But for you to prolong this case over years, because let's just take NYS, for example. When did this pop up? 3 years ago?
But my dear, you're talking about NYS.
Just as an example.
Was the Anglo-leasing case ever resolved?
This is the thing.
Was the Goldenberg case ever resolved?
Day after day after day, month on month, year on year, costing the taxpayer money, the same money that you say is not available for you to do this job, to expedite these duties, because there's a backlog. There are not enough magistrates. There's not enough this, that, the other thing. We're not able to then expedite justice because 1, 2, 3 things have not happened. I'm sorry, but those examples cannot continue to be used for cases that we see in court 10 years.
All right.
Goldenberg,
the
15 years. You
claims
can't use that as an excuse anymore. And until the point where people are going to be able to see this as what it actually is, then we're going to continue having a problem.
Actually, when you say you can't use the excuse, but the excuse is being used.
we can't continue to use the excuse.
It is continuing. This is the point I'm trying to make.
And you have to be at the point whereby you say no. And yesterday we talked about panicking too early. At this point, I believe it's past panic. In a different example, the people of this country are going to be lost because certain things are not going to happen. Everywhere you look, there's a problem. And people want to say, don't take on that stance of panicking. But I think we need to. You need to get to the point whereby it is so uncomfortable that you need to get out of it. It cannot continue to happen this way. And then we say there's no money. These basic things that you should be able to do for the country, we're not able to do because money has been siphoned and used for other things. And in a court where they either should pay or at least serve their time for having done these things, they say even that we cannot expedite justice. Are you kidding me?
You see, if you look at, for instance, just not the cost, but the monies involved in some of these cases, the people involved still live in this country. The monies are that they're supposed or they're accused of having siphoned, a lot of it still is resident in the country. Now, these people are genuinely going about their lives normally.
Like nothing happened.
Yes, no one bars them from leaving the country, no one bars them from entering the country. But of more interest, we do not have any information as to whether the asset recovery unit within the government is actually doing work. We hear snippets of information. Oh, they've recovered X billion. Good, they've recovered X billion. But against what? What do you expect?
What was the capacity?
Yes, if you tell me 20 billion
and you've recovered one,
then I'll say, okay, we get it.
Take a pause. 16 minutes to past 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at weather and then the combination continues.
Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi today at 18 degrees currently, expecting rain later on with highs of 26 and lows of 16. In Nakuru at 14 degrees, partly cloudy conditions, expecting rain later with lows of 17. In Eldoret, it's clear skies today at 14 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 13. Clear skies this morning at 21 degrees in Kisumu. Mombasa at 27 degrees, expecting a high of 32 with partly cloudy conditions through the day. 15 degrees in Nyeri and partly cloudy, rain expected later with highs of 24 and lows of 15. In Malindi at 27 degrees, it's mostly sunny today with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Taking a look in East Africa at Dar es Salaam at 27 degrees, partly cloudy conditions with highs of 33 and lows of 26. And finally in Kampala at 21 degrees, partly cloudy conditions, rain expected later with highs of 28 and lows of 20.
Chilled Spice.
Where are you this morning? Thank you very much for tuning in to Spice FM in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We are live streaming the show on Spice FM KE, Facebook and Twitter. Siti Muga this morning is reminding us about democracy and saying one of the key elements of democracy is the rule of law, and the rule of law applying to everybody equally.
Yes, and of course with this comes the fallacy of what people think democracy is. This is something that you may actually mirror against how it is practiced. Our politics begins with our political parties. And I've heard it said by most people that they want to practice democracy within political parties. This, unfortunately, is not true. Political parties, by their very nature, are not democratic. It's like asking a church organization to be democratic. The very head of that church advances what you call a theocracy. So the issue of democracy cannot possibly be the cornerstone of that particular institution. If you look at any political party, the reality is that every political party, not some, every on this planet has its owners. There are people who formed it with specific ideas of what they wanted to achieve, and they have rules by which they go about it. For instance, in Kenya, people believe that political parties should have these general elections. Well, they tie themselves in a bind because they have a constitution or some document that ties them to it, and they say this is what we are going to do. No one asks them to, but that's what they say. So every time you have an election, someone says, we had this election, and you wonder, why don't you just face the truth and say, we don't elect, we nominate. It is your party. That's what you do. That would be the truth. And I doubt if anyone would complain. It is what you do. But what you do, you claim that you go through a party election, and essentially what you're going through is a party nomination. You have pre-decided who you'd like, and that is the person who is going to go in. When we have issues at the national level, what we've done is we've carried out the practices, or we've carried over our practices at the party level now to the national level. So, people who are aligned to the party leaders, closest to the party leader, are the ones who are most likely to benefit. There's nothing absolutely wrong with it. It is wrong when you then pretend that this is a democratic process.
Right, but at the same time, we also then face the danger of these individuals that you would now then encourage later with the plum jobs, a plum appointment, for example, are more likely than not to support you, regardless of what happens. They're likely to rule if a judge is or a magistrate is sitting in a particular position, likely to rule in your favor, or likely to make sure that these things are carried out for as long as possible. If we're looking at the judicial system now and how we are looking at justice being expedited, or in this case for very many not being expedited, why is it that we continue to allow these things to happen? And then in the same breath complaining about the fact that there's not enough in this country to be able to fuel the programs towards development that we continue to talk about. It cannot be the case that it continues. Goldenberg, give a timeline. 20 years ago?
No. It's more.
It's more. Anglo Leasing, 20 years ago?
Yes.
NYS, just 5 years ago. We're looking at the dams last year, the year before. And these cases are in court. People have been sacked, but like you said, they're going ahead with their jobs as if nothing is the case. Democracy, interestingly enough, I do agree on that point. Democracy is supposed to be something that presents some kind of equality across board for all people, regardless of
in
your
a transparent manner that anyone can see.
We can all see
That's
and say,
a lie.
Look, this is what it's supposed.
It's a fallacy that has been sold to us, right?
This is what it's supposed to be.
Remember, I started by saying it's theoretical.
Right. But
and people aspire towards it.
If you look at the tenets of democracy, the founding fathers themselves of democracy, this is what they actually prescribed.
Did they practice it?
This is what they prescribed.
But did they practice it?
But they did not practice them on their own. Because
actually, the answer is yes. Remember that the times when these things were being espoused and being talked about, the very concept of what you call a plebeian, a simple citizen having rights, was unheard of. So anything that they did would resonate as being profound. Remember, democracy as it has been presented is now being challenged in the very countries that spearheaded it. In France, it's being challenged seriously. And what has brought it to the fore? The president simply wants to rearrange the so-called issue of retirement age and the benefits that come with it. In America that has advertised itself as the mother, father, uncle, auntie of democracy, democracy is being challenged there. Why? Because the theory as it has been practiced has been found to be wanting. Why? The current needs that people have, when they look at them, they realize, this thing isn't quite working. In this country, we've had a situation where we hear there are two groups. There's one called Tanga Tanga, there's one called Kileweke. If we leave the politics out of it, this is actually a very good sign of the vibrancy of democracy, where parties within themselves can actually engage and disengage and debate, and this is actually good. But if you throw politics into it, then for and against comes into the equation, and so are for the president, the other ones are not for the president. And yet, we are seeing before our very eyes an evolution of something that is actually good for any political party, if you ask me. Because when a political party is comfortable, the way KANU was comfortable from independence, then all manner of atrocities come into being. And why? In the name of the words, very democratic sounding words, maintaining unity, maintaining peace, ensuring that Kenya is united. Right? Now, indeed, Kenya had peace. Kenya has been united. But at what cost? It's this cost element that is further propelled by statements that in essence are actually lies. But they're said so often, you actually believe it is true. You are told, for instance, every time something comes up, we do not want to hear politics because we want to focus on development. Then you ask, let's pause. That's excellent statement. Which developments are we speaking of? And where are they taking place? And if they have started, how many have we completed? Simple questions. And then you suddenly find that there are gaps. There are people who do not want to focus on the development. They want to sidetrack us with other discussions.
There are people who just
yes.
don't want to do their jobs, because also realizing that everybody benefiting at the same time is of benefit to you as an individual, is of even greater benefit when everybody is moving forward. And for us to not see that, really, when you talk about development, when you say that it doesn't happen in part, it must be total, then for it to be seen to be effective. You can't say we have a little bit here and a little bit there. It must be total in order for us to see the efficiency of it. You can't say that I'm going to do a little bit here so that there can be a little bit in my pocket. You leave somebody behind. So at the end of the day, these are individuals who are not doing their job. These are people who are not carrying the torch. And we can't continue to say that, well, okay, we live in a democratic space and we're trying to make sure that we... And I do believe at this point we can't look at democracy as a system that is static, because essentially it is being run by individuals, people behind it. It can't be static, and it can't be that it is one theory that is going to be applied across board and it's going to work. But it has to be seen to be transparent, whatever it is that you're doing, because we're going to find ourselves stuck with these things over time. We brought up this issue just an hour ago when we talked about, okay, well, can't we do something about it? The people at the top, the people who are in positions don't want to do anything about it. Can NEMA not shut down this thing that we see happening in Kisumu? Yes, they can if they decide that they want to. Can't we see that we'll have court cases expedited? They can if they want to. But these are individuals who are sitting in positions who choose not to.
Think, for instance, what has happened in the U.S. I have to keep giving the example of the U.S. because they have for the longest time presented themselves as the very essence of democracy, right? You have a situation where the Attorney General is now being accused of meddling in matters that he shouldn't meddle in. You have 1,100 judicial service officers signing on to this petition saying, please resign. Why? Because clearly you missed the point. This is not your job. You are not required to do this. You're supposed to uphold the law. If those fellows make a recommendation, they've made the recommendation. My goodness, this thing is snowballing. Other judges have now come into the debate. Now, this is the vibrancy of democracy, meaning people are pursuing that often elusive point of being not only truthful, but living up to the dictates and the tenets of that democracy. Now, ours, it's not that people don't live to it, but we have an interpretation and we have a form of democracy that doesn't benefit the citizenry as it should. It is a form because you cannot deny we have freedoms. You cannot deny that we have elections. You cannot deny that there are many positive things that afford even the most simplest of person the space. But alongside with that, you have a democracy that has been hijacked because it's now democracy according to either the politicians or according to the bureaucrats that we have. Now, this is not democracy. It is the Kenyan brand of democracy. And it is as toxic as the toxins that are getting into Lake Victoria.
Well, on that I would have to agree. And I think that in many cases, we put the cart before the horse. Because at the same time, we're trying to say that, to be governed for the people, by the people, et cetera, which is, of course, one of the tenets of democracy. But at the same time, we're trying to actualize economically. And you can't have the two at the same time. And I think that's the problem. People are trying to actualize economically as individuals and at the same time trying to at least show that they're actualizing for the country as a whole.
We just have criminals. Look, let's just accept it. We have been taken over by a cabal of criminals. And these criminals are the ones who are basically running what they want to call democracy. If you see people who connive to steal from public coffers and then they're taken to court, and they work with the system to ensure that they are never brought to justice. What do you call that? It's a band of thieves. That's what we have. And look, we are mentioning all those cases, starting from even Goldenberg, we even go to a point where we have a commission of inquiry. A commission of inquiry recommends further investigation with a view to prosecuting certain individuals. Further investigations do not take place.
I dare say that the system is not even about working or being in cahoots or colluding with the system to make sure that you're protected.
It's not the system.
I think the system is already predisposed to make sure that these fellows, when they actually are caught, don't actually go beyond bail. By the time they're bailed out, it's as good as done. We all know it's predisposed. We know, for example, we know, for example, if another powerful person were to be arrested today, what is the first thing that's going to go into your mind? The first thing that you'll think is that, of course, How much?
But
How much? Predisposed to that kind of thing.
When we talk of system, we must remember that systems don't work. They are not animated. They're inanimate. A system is in the absence of people, and that's where Eric's position of criminals, I think he's got to the heart of it. We keep referring to these people as bureaucrats when in essence they're criminals. We keep referring to them as politicians when in essence they're criminals, because even among those groups, you will find people who do not do what some do. There are those who actually don't.
They don't rule the day, though.
No.
They don't carry the day, unfortunately.
Remember, participation is also, by the way, characterized by silence.
Mm-hmm.
There are those who speak out against it. There are those who action what they want to do. There are those who are silent, who are the majority. And in this case, when you're silent, you might as well agree with those who are
You're basically agreeing with them.
Yes.
That's what is happening. You're agreeing with them. You're sitting there or even trying to explain.
Yeah. And the ones who are silent, actually, there's no oh my gosh factor anymore. Look at countries like, if you want to step out, look at countries like the Netherlands, where it would be, what? My name tinged with any kind of corruption?
This happened in my office. People
not.
Came and
I resign.
They were trying to use my name.
I resign.
I wouldn't allow this to happen.
Immediately. So that find out what is going on, but don't associate my name with that kind of thing. There's no shame factor here anymore whatsoever. It has been removed at the cost of the citizenry for whom the system is supposed to be protecting in the first place. It's a total joke.
So the democracy that we're practicing in Kenya is basically a fallacy. It's been hijacked.
Man, it started being a fallacy a long time ago, but like with other things in this country, a lie is perpetrated for so long you actually think it's good.
It becomes the truth. 7:30, let's take a look at traffic and then the conversation continues.
Right, most roads in industrial area today, of course, there's a snarl up. We're looking at Lusaka Road, Bunyala Road, and then inside Enterprise Road, Road A, B, A, and C today giving us some problems. And that's right in the middle of industrial area. Of course, they're now trying to get off to GM and then come out on the other side on Jogo Road. So that means that Jogo Road traffic getting into the city centre around about the City Stadium roundabout is bumper to bumper. Langata Road at this time, of course, we saw that traffic was as far back as the Bomas Junction. It's snaking along slowly, but this means that around now KWS, you then have it much slower than normal. All right, looking at Juja Road today and then onto Outer Ring. People haven't moved for the last hour, unfortunately. There's a shutdown this morning on that road, and people who are already on the road are having to turn back. So you might not want to use that as an option this morning. The eastern and southern bypasses to access or get out of Mombasa and Thika Road are working very well this morning, so not much of a problem. Mombasa Road, of course, still giving off those vibes as you try to get to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. We'll let you know what things look like in a short while. Get us on Spice FM KE. Tell us what you see.
Breathing life into the 90s. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
You've actually defined it, because this is a democracy where the very people the democracy is supposed to protect are the ones who suffer the most under it. Boris Johnson recently got an advisor. His name was Andrew Sabinski, and he self-proclaimed super forecaster. He had to resign. But one of the reasons he had to resign was people went back to some of the things that he has said in the past. So things he doesn't apologize for, doesn't regret. Let me just mention one. One, he says that if this compulsory contraception that people have and we people think is good, said it could lead to the permanent underclass. That was mild. He also went forth to say, documented in the public domain, that the blacks have a lower IQ than whites. He was referring to the black Americans. And he said very many unpalatable, unfathomable things. He had to resign. But in his resignation, he said, he called this mass hysteria in the media. And he said That was old stuff which was online, and that he was resigning because it would be a distraction for the Johnson government. Now, is that really true? Because to say it was a distraction, it's sort of like to deny that what he did, he actually did.
Or that he actually said these
Yes,
things.
so he's saying that, in fact, these are the people who are making noise who have a problem. And they're distracting me from doing the work I'm supposed to from Johnson.
Yes.
He doesn't comment about what he said. He doesn't.
Basically, he stands by what he said.
He basically
He's just
stands.
wondering, why are you people making so much noise? If you're making so much noise,
Now.
then you're going to distract Boris Johnson from delivering on his promise by stepping aside.
Essentially, leave me alone to just say the unsavory things I want. Meaning, he's not aware that when you're in public service, a certain ethos is required. You can't be in the public domain and just do what you like and say what you like. Why do they have a code of conduct for people who are in public service? Because they're saying you are representing the citizenry, the larger population, so you cannot just do what you like. Yeah, I guess in the UK it's best enshrined in the Queen and the family, because they definitely cannot just do what they like. It tends to have consequences.
Yep.
For instance, you can't decide that you want to go and flip burgers and you're a prince. It's not going to work.
Well, you can do that, but then the likelihood of you remaining a part of this establishment is very low.
Yes,
Right.
and it's something that is documented, and the trend, it's known. It's a path you take it, you head in a certain direction, but you can't head in the direction you're heading in if you make certain decisions.
So bring it back home again, City.
We have a situation where people take an oath of office. Whether you're an MP, whether you're a civil servant, you take an oath of office. And that oath of office is the one thing that I think flies out of the window immediately that you've been sworn in. Alone on that oath of office that they take, many of our leaders who have been mentioned, should either have resigned or removed from office, but not even for the crime, but just for the oath that they took, because that is swearing and saying, I swear that this is what I'm going to do. And then you're found not to do it.
Uphold, defend.
Yes.
And conscientiously.
Yes, you're found not to do it. So that alone should remove you. Forget the court cases that come with whatever the misdeed. That alone you should actually move aside. But ours do not. So the culture that is created is...
So let's look at it.
Yes.
We have several cases. Are you saying that the health CS should step aside?
The health CS should step aside.
We have
Should have
MES.
done it a minute ago, actually.
Are you saying that now we have issues about the Deputy President's office?
The Deputy President should step aside.
Deputy President should step aside.
Yes, he should.
Yes.
Because of the implication here.
Yes.
So the Defense Minister,
Step aside.
the Chief of Defense Forces,
Chief of Defense Forces has not been mentioned here.
it's happening in DOD.
No, it may happen in DOD, but remember, DOD reports to the Ministry of Defense. This guy that we're speaking of, Chief of General Staff or whatever the terminology is,
He's now CDF.
yes, CDF.
Chief of Defense Forces.
No.
So
Chief-
CDF is not culpable.
No. I don't think so, because if we start with the CDF and the Minister for Defense, then you're going to say CDF, Minister for Defense, and Head of Procurement.
Yes.
Step aside.
Yes.
Yes, not just one person. Step aside.
Kakando.
Kakando, as we look into this thing. Let's keep mentioning. Look at what it is that brought Governor Waititu down, all right? Those cases are in court. Remember, he has not been found guilty of any of those crimes.
Yeah.
But because of the mention and because of the process that followed, culpability, it was seen some wrong had been done. As to whether they can prove what he was accused of in court, different case. So, and if it is not, you see, all these cases you're talking about, it's not one mention. It is many mentions. There should be something direct, not just a question of stepping aside. If there's anything in terms of wealth that is attributed to you and cannot be explained, the Auditor General can do that on quick sharp. You don't need a year to do.
Yeah.
Frozen.
Look,
Simple.
when a theft happens in an estate, for example, before
The chairman of the estate.
No,
steps
wait.
aside.
The police come. Who are the first people who are arrested?
Security.
The gatekeepers. The people who are responsible at the gate, which is the most important, getting in.
Yeah.
Before they ask any questions, before they just ask who was on duty overseeing
So, but the
this
chairman of the
area.
estate committee does not
No,
step
I
aside.
go back to the gatekeeper, which in most cases, in this case, the gatekeeper of the Ministry for Defense is the CS in this case. The office of the vice president, the gatekeeper, is the vice president. The office of whomever else you want to look at, if they say there was a scandal at NYS, who was the gatekeeper for that department within the ministry? As in, let's remove you from this entire equation in order for us to actually find out what happened without asking questions. But here, by the time we ask questions, say maybe, if, and perhaps, people have been able to do whatever they want to do, mix in the system, and nobody's asking questions anymore.
There's the issue, though, of, if you're talking about somebody who's been elected, how do you step aside?
This is
that
the
debate
thing,
has been raised
because
before.
People who've been elected, do they still not take...
No, you can't.
No, I'm asking. People who have been elected, do they still not take an oath?
They do.
They do.
Exactly.
Yes, but there's a different process if you want to remove somebody who's been elected.
We're not saying remove. Step
aside from what?
No.
From your duties.
No, look. Where it gets tricky, the point you're making is a valid one, but it gets tricky, say, with MCAs or with MPs, all right?
Mm-hmm.
If an MP has been found to do wrong, it'll be in his individual capacity. Have you ever heard of, say, a body within, say, Parliament? Like, let's say, this particular committee that does this. Have you ever heard of a committee being taken to court? No. Why? Their job is supervisory, really. Okay? So if there's any wrongdoing, it'll have to be imputed on an individual. Then it is criminal or it is civil, whatever it is. But even before an MP steps down, unfortunately, what our law allows us to do will have to come into force. You're talking about state servants, state officials versus public servants. And about that debate, which is which? When you work for the government, as in you're a minister, government, you're a PS, government, whatever it is, you are employed. You're appointed usually. You go through a process, but you're appointed. Now, those are the fellows who are most likely to step down. Now, if you hold a job like, say, the deputy president or president, unfortunately, aside from just being elected, you
impeach yourself.
Yep. Or they go through a process of impeaching. Now, the voluntary stepping aside is something that people are asked to do. And you are right, an MP can't step aside. He can say...
He can resign.
I no longer want to do it.
Yes, he can. We've seen it happen in different places in the world.
Yes.
Because this is the thing.
No, even in Kenya we've seen it happen.
Because this is the thing. That individual realizes the sanctity of that office and the responsibility that they hold.
Repeat that again.
Sanctity of that office and the responsibility that they hold. Where we see that people have stepped aside because they understand that this work that I am doing is not really just about me, but that there are people who are under my responsibility as well, and I have been tasked with the responsibility to make sure that they develop moving forward. And if there's anything that's going to taint my image or taint the image of the office, then I can't continue to be here. This is the practice that I think clearly needs to be adopted. If it is not, then where are we going? We just seem to be going round and round in circles, trying to catch the proverbial tail, and it's actually not happening. It's not happening. We're not moving forward. If we really want to, we can call all the numbers.
Stepping aside, for example, if the DP were to say, all right, so this thing have been mentioned, these people were coming to my office, they were asking to see me. I was not there, but I was not present. But it has come out in the public domain. I'm therefore stepping aside as the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. If we were to do that, would it solve the issue?
Of course not.
Oh,
it
yes.
It doesn't solve the issue with any kind of immediacy.
The answer to
but what it does is that it opens the door.
The answer to that is yes.
How?
Because a step will have been taken to show that someone has the mindset to actually hold himself responsible, for his office and what his office is supposed to do. It'll solve one problem. It'll show you that there's someone within this system of ours who actually understands what the oath of office that he took means and what it is that his representation means. Yes, it will solve a very big problem. We will see someone...
What's the problem?
Irresponsibility. People
are not taking responsibility for their office and for their actions.
But guys, we have seen it before. Anwar Iguru resigned and stepped aside and said, I'm asking the president to give me lighter duties because I'm the whistleblower in this particular case. Did it solve the NYS issue?
Yes, it did.
No, it didn't.
It did.
No. After she stepped aside, there was still NYS too.
Eric, why I'm saying
she blew the whistle once.
I'm setting the condition. I'm saying the premise on which her resignation set forth a premise. Thereafter, other people either lost their jobs, are in court, the case is ongoing. But that someone has taken that step. It is not a non-event. It is a serious position. It is not something that can be taken lightly. What problem does it solve? It solves this problem that we've had for eternity, saying people in high offices never resign when it comes to ethical issues being leveled against their office or them. So when someone takes that step, yes, they've said, no, it's not true. There are people in high office who actually resign from their jobs on matters of conscience. Again, you recall a time when Kiraitu Murungi is also mentioned. He also resigned, did he not? He resigned. So there are people who have resigned. Now, because the vast majority of people don't even think, they don't even entertain the idea of resigning, you think it doesn't work. It does. It does.
But in this country, those examples that you've given, right?
Yes.
So Kiraitu Murungi stepped aside. This was the issue of the Anglo leasing. This is Anne Waiguru stepped aside on the issue of NYS. Did we solve the NYS issue?
Yes.
We haven't.
No.
We haven't.
Allow me to give you my thinking. But when I'm saying this is a definitive yes, I'm saying it solved the NYS issue in this regard. It pointed us to the fact that there are government officials, the NYS leadership being one, who are willing to take responsibility for whatever mess they have in their docket. That is the problem it solved. It showed that, yes, someone can take responsibility. That's what I'm saying. Not that it solved the problem so that it no longer exists. No, that it cannot do. Why it cannot do? Because you're talking about a prevalent thinking that has pervaded our entire public sector.
Yeah. And when somebody takes political responsibility, it doesn't mean that the other people who are directly culpable are taking any responsibility.
No, but it opens the door.
They'll still sit back and still say, well,
okay.
Minister Amanda.
I still go back to Section 2A, the issue of the repealing of it. I always go back to that because in the absence of that, we would not be even where we are today. That activity that took place in 1997?
91.
92. Okay, 91? That is what has, over the time, brought this about. So, if there were no signs of change, then I would say, whoa, we are damned. But so long as you see signs of it, what one can predict is when it will likely gain momentum.
This is the thing, because yes, there can be signs of it, but people want to see this train moving. At this point, what we've done is that you've put fuel in the tank. All right, we have some top dogs then who essentially have been arrested and then brought before court. But then that's it. This is where we are right now.
Okay,
this thing is not moving.
Let me have this debate with you then. Ask, who do we blame in the case where we constantly say police like bribes? The person who gives the bribe or the person who takes it?
Both.
Or asks for it?
Both.
Precisely. Now, you're going to have to arrest most of the citizens of this country. Do we have jail space for all of them?
Yeah, arrest them. Arrest them.
You know where I'm going with this? Yes. Same old story. You cannot keep complaining about a situation that you yourself participate in and encourage. You cannot. So much as we cannot, you ask the question, and I'm answering it. We need to get to a point where we're tired. How can people be tired of a system that they encourage?
That's what people are not tired.
They support it. They water it.
People are not
tired. They feed it. No. This one goes beyond poking the bear. No. This one is feeding the bear and helping the bear sire new pups. Yes. So, again, if you are going to talk about these things, then the question we were asking yesterday, what else?
Let's open the phone lines, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Join the conversation. You can also post your comments on Facebook and Twitter at SpiceFMKE on both accounts. Good morning. It's 10 to 8.
Spice FM, Nyeri. Breathing life into the 90s.
Taking that issue of that. And you've seen there's a lot of
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
For the DP to stop, responding to this with sort of escapism and taking responsibility. This thing happened in my office. And it not coming out to say it's only 23 minutes, only meeting in a boardroom, only 4 people, only nobody in DP's personal staff met them, but taking that responsibility. Is that what you're saying?
That is part of what I am saying. It begins there. Now this one, the DP must have a communication department. Should sack all those fellows. This is something that could have been responded to and other things in a way that indicates the very thing you're saying, that look, it is clear that this thing happened in my ministry and this is how I'm going to take responsibility for it. What we hear is running away from that responsibility. You stop short of saying actually it's somebody else. And if you wait long enough, somebody else will be pointed at. Now.
Oh no, asking the question, trying to send us off to DOD.
That is, see? DOD, believe me, somebody else will be pointed to.
There's always somebody that can take the blame, or that you can point to somebody else and say, actually, you know what? It's somebody else who needs to. They are the ones who need to
answer.
The
DP's office is not involved in procurement. We know.
But we also know politically what that office means.
Thank you. In fact, the moment you make that statement, you've opened such a Pandora's box. And then all of a sudden, somebody asks, wait, when did this get introduced into this particular debate? And then the debate rages on. And then people will come with all manner of innuendos, suggestions, interpretations. You know, where it gets really, really messy, and why I brought in the citizenry is this. You will hear somebody saying, our person is being picked on. All right, let's say he's being picked on. But are these issues that are being brought up, are they salient? Are they worth talking about? And the answer usually is yes. So then we ask the second question, at what point is this individual being picked on? The moment you're in public life, that's the whole point. Your life is an open book. It will be talked about. The things you do will be questioned.
You're a target.
You should have had a thick skin to be able to go through this. And that's one of the things that you told us that you had when you were getting in. I can handle it, right?
Now you've got it.
Now you have it, and you should be able to deal with it.
Yes.
Because it's going to come right at you time after time after time, especially if there are things that are suspects that are happening within those gates that you're supposed to be keeping. People are going to ask questions.
If it was something normal that could easily be explained, this debate would have died a long time ago. Because one explanation would have done it, end of story.
Everybody would have been quiet.
Yes. But you cannot have a situation. Look, CS Health, you asked the question, Eric, okay?
Yeah.
There's a lot that has happened in that ministry. A lot. And there's a lot of money whose expenditure I think people in that ministry have found difficult to explain. It is that very same ministry that was at the center of some 5 billion shillings expose by the Auditor General. And as a result of it, people who are involved in procurement of the government took a real hit.
Yeah.
They said, okay, you guys, it's important we look at this thing again. But like other such things, we heard the statement, they were not sacked. No, we actually don't know what actually happened to all these people. Not really. But the truth of the matter is, did it resolve the matter that we're speaking of? The answer is, of course, it didn't. Because even if you replace these people, all you've done is you've handed the mantle to another group of people. It's not as though you've changed anything. And why this hasn't changed is because, one, we have a judicial system that at best seems to be pussyfooting about matters that are brought to them. And they are also pointing fingers.
Somebody at the prosecutors, for example.
Prosecutors, 1, DPP, 2, and 3, Treasury. They're always. The question of you are funded, you have money. What do you do with what you have? That question is never really answered fully.
Right.
It's always, it's not
where
enough.
have you gone? The one that you have, how far have you been able
the
to go?
The response is that
it's
not enough. That's the response. It's not enough.
It's never going to be enough. But
it's never
normally
enough.
They say, I mean, the person who said cut your coat according to your cloth kind of knew what they were talking about when they said, all right, with what you have in front of you and then the resources that you have, let's at least see that you're going somewhere. It can't be. Look, let's not even try and make this thing a lot more complicated than it actually is. It cannot be that every single high-class case you have before you cannot move for those 3 reasons that you've given. What are we giving? Why is there a stay? Why is there a stay? You're talking about treasuries. They do not release money. We don't have enough money. Oh, prosecutors have not brought enough evidence. Oh, whomever. What? It can't. It's got to be one thing.
All those things are.
You would rather even say all these other cases. Well, we have a backlog of 12 cases, for example. Okay, do one. Do one, handle one, get it out of the way, go to the next one. Simple mathematics here. Unless there's something complicated. And if there is something complicated, again, seeking for clarity, it has to be made very clear. Kenyans are baying for blood. At the very least, they want to see action. They want to see something taking place.
Patrick
and you
Azara,
owe it to them to have that done.
Patrick Azara is asking this. Everywhere else in the world, people resign. In Kenya, people are expected to step aside. Why can't we apply the same in Kenya? Where in fact, people say, not just stepping aside at a pending investigation. Go.
You are either pressurized to resign or you feel the moral obligation to resign.
Yes.
Underline the word moral.
This is the thing I was
so
talking
Kenya
about.
moral zero.
No, there's no shame factor here anymore. I'm sorry. There's no shame factor. It doesn't play at all. It doesn't play. And these are the questions that we now need. If we have not been asking that question, it needs to be asked and really scrutinized at this point. There is no shame. Whether it is 2 shillings, 20 shillings, 2 billion shillings, nobody feels, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't actually do this. No. It's not a matter of
It's only 7 billion.
Theft isn't really preconditional on amount.
No. It really isn't.
No.
The moral issue around these things doesn't exist anymore. It really doesn't. And we talked about, there's omission and commission. We talked about those individuals. We can't say that everybody in this group is doing the same thing. But those who are quiet bear as much responsibility as those who are overtly doing this thing.
Those who are silent as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, they participate.
You know that your colleague is doing certain things, but okay, that's the way the cookie crumbles, so we just allow it to continue that way.
I don't do such kind of things.
I don't do it, but I know they do it, but I don't actually. I'm upholding the tenets of my office. Or I know that, I know they bought huge tracts of land.
I tried to speak out, I saw I'm going to be kicked out.
Yeah, I tried to speak out and I saw that I too would lose my job. So I decided that let me just be quiet,
focus on my job.
Focus my job and do what I need
Kenyans
to do.
No, it further.
It can't be.
I decided to pray to my God. Keep quiet and pray for that man's soul. For heaven's sake.
So who's fooling who?
Yes, we cannot point fingers at state officials and not point fingers at ourselves. We cannot. Now, I know it sounds like it's a finger-pointing exercise, but you see, we keep talking of democracy. We keep talking about people being underprivileged. We keep talking about the things that need to be done. And the truth of the matter is this. When you go back to the tenets of democracy and the beginnings of what we call modern democracy, the common mwananchi participated in that process. That's why it became widespread. If they didn't participate in that process by essentially making their voices and their displeasure known and saying, we don't like this, we're not accepting this, the status quo would have been maintained. Remember, it is this coronavirus right now that has put stayed on those protests permanently in Hong Kong. Kamsa,
done pretty well, eh?
They've done pretty well. If Paris had a situation where they told you that there were 10 people who had been diagnosed with coronavirus, I am certain all those protests you're seeing would come to an end. Why? Because you don't want to die. Because it's now being associated with death. We've forgotten HIV completely. Coronavirus. You have it, the likelihood of dying is high. Now, that points to our capacity for self-preservation, and yet we don't see that when you encourage a corrupt system, it is you who's killing yourself. You are encouraging this monster to grow in leaps and bounds. Your participation is crucial to it all. Someone say, but, oh no, we don't have this. You don't have what exactly? These things don't start with marching. These things start with you. The things you will put up with, the things you won't put up with, the things you say you will not do, and being able to call things out and say, excuse me.
This actually is not right.
There is a prize, yes, but you have made a stand. Now, we have allowed our leaders to make a stand that guarantees that we will continually be exploited. We have no right to explain. We are responsible for this democracy that we have, or our version of it, in as much as our leaders are. And the big fallacy is, we say we're an upright Christian country. We think we are. We are actually not.
We should be demanding more of ourselves and our leaders.
Yes.
Okay, the conversation continues as well on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter. Coming up to 8 o'clock, this is the situation, which is Kenya's biggest conversation. Broadcasting in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, as well as live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke, on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and at Spice FM KE Twitter. Good morning. Let's take a look at traffic and then we come back to the conversation.
All right, this morning, not so bad on Mombasa Road. Around the time that you get to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout and then onwards is not so terrible. Of course, getting there is a totally different story. From after we saw what was a hold up on Waiaki Way, so looking a lot better now, trying to get into the CBD. And then, of course, we have the problem that we do along Jogo Road. It's terrible, unfortunately. And trying to get into the CBD, not as easy, but it's moving slowly, but it's moving all the same. Langata Road is where we seem to have the most problems today, trying to get in and out of the city both ways. Very, very slow right now. Apart from that, Thika Road, of course, trying to get in through the Pangani underpass will have a little bit of traffic, but it's moving. So everything seems to be moving, which is good news today, guys. Spice FMK is how you can reach us on Twitter or give us a call if you see something we should know about. We'll spread the word, but it's good traffic vibes this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko,
So we have the phone
Nigerian
lines
by
open
birth,
0719
Kenyan by
012
choice,
600.
communications
That's
expert,
0719
Pan-Africanist,
012
a truth
600.
seeker
City
and
Muga is
believer.
talking about democracy in the sense of Kenya, looking at how a cabal of people operate as if they are above the law, also looking at taking political responsibility and responsibility as a country. So when it comes to taking political responsibility, of course, the story around the country right now is taking responsibility in the office of the Deputy President, where the Deputy President's office has been mentioned in this particular, arms scam. Right? And the first statement that the DP had issued here on Twitter was, look, guys, ignore the nonsense in the media. These people only met in our office for 23 minutes. Where else did they go to? Have you seen who else they met at the DOD? Who else did they talk to? And the issue was canvassed again yesterday. The DP's communications director released a statement saying this is what we've established so far, that Mr. Echesa and two of his people came and they had a meeting. They were asking to meet the Deputy President. They sat in a waiting area. This is where the CCTV shows them sitting there for about 23 minutes and then they left. They were caught there. Basically, it's just trying to push around the issue of responsibility and saying, as they came, wanted to come to, this is a public office. They wanted to meet here. And people have really torn into the DP and saying the DP should not have issued this kind of statement. First of all, say, I am irked and angered by what is happening. That the fact that such criminal elements can come into an office, access a highly secure office as the presidency, sit in a boardroom, sign deals, forged documents, and they claim that they have met in the Deputy President's office, it's a bad thing. And action should be taken on those officials who are all responsible.
What is of interest is that if you were to Google search list of either high-ranking officials, vice presidents, presidents who've resigned, This continent doesn't feature very well in that particular list. We don't seem to resign. The latest resignation that we know of, which was documented, was that of President Mugabe, if you remember correctly. Now, we know how that went, don't we? But let's say he resigned. Who else do we know of on this continent who's actually resigned? Meaning
Julius Kambarage Nyerere.
Yes.
Aling'atuka.
He didn't just resign. That man simply moved away.
Yeah.
Yes, he left office. Daniel Arap Moi would fall into that category of president. You would argue his term of office came to an end, but they left the job. Now, people who resign usually resign because there's an issue. Either it is some impropriety in their own lives, something personal, whether it is something financial, whatever it is. But the responsibility that they take in tandem with the oath of office that they also took. Remember, these are voluntary things. You volunteer to go into politics, you volunteer to vie for a post, and by virtue of that, you volunteer to take that oath.
Yep.
I do not know of anyone who is in a public office who didn't take an oath. I don't know. Maybe they are, but I don't know. It's part and parcel of it. So if it is found that there are questions around the sanctity of that oath, people tend to resign.
People should resign. And I don't think we should even pussyfoot around this issue, because we're talking about something that essentially that job for which you are sitting, in one regard or another, you have failed. Whether it is a
When you
failure,
say that, by the way, our
it's
entire government should be resigning.
Absolutely. If that's what we need to look at. And this is
From
the thing.
the presidency all the way down.
Drastic
Because,
Drastic times call for drastic measures. If that's what we want to look at, let's look at it, because it's like we're afraid to call it what it is. If there is the failure, then that which you're supposed to be doing, you're not doing. Is it necessary that all this should be scrapped? Then absolutely. If it's going to take us forward, that is what needs to happen. So it's like sometimes we don't want to say it because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or we don't want to make it a reality.
For your feelings to be hurt, you need to have them.
That this is actually what the people feel. That is what they feel. That they look at you sometimes and they're speaking out of their mouth, but that truth does not go behind their eyes. That they're not telling you something that they actually feel. Because if we were going to be truthful about this thing, the majority of the people who are sitting in public office are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. There has been failure on very, very many accounts, and we just continue to take it because we are fooled, or that we do this dalliance with the fallacy that it is okay for you to get away with these things. It is not okay.
Actually,
and it needs to be categorically stated. It is not
the getting
okay.
away isn't a fallacy.
Somebody resigned. I gave you the example. Somebody in the Netherlands resigned, not because money was stolen, but because somebody said that they were in a particular place at a particular time that they should not have been. And that spiraled out of control and created this whole big volcano upon which people started to ask many more questions. The gentleman said, okay, if this is going to taint my image in any way, shape or form, I tender my resignation, so that either two things would happen. Somebody else who would come then and would have such a glowing image that no questions would be asked, or at least the questions that were necessary to be asked about this particular incident could then be asked. Because it is clear that in my position, I cannot allow that process to take place. We have so divorced ourselves from the possibility of asking these questions on this continent. It's not possible to even ask. How dare you? Take a trip over to Nigeria. How dare you even ask somebody who sits in government a question?
To resign? What do you mean?
What do you mean? How? Why? What do you mean? I'm sitting in this position, Lord and Master over you.
Remember,
how dare you ask me to resign?
The Netherlands is one of those 8 countries. If you look at the Democracy Index of 2017, they are considered to be one of those countries that actually practice democracy. And
to the letter.
No one does it. But they strive towards it. Where representation is not only taken seriously, but the citizenry actually have a huge say. That's why.
And they hold you to account.
Yes, who you represent feel that your representation is not up to scratch, you resign.
That's it.
Here, unakaa ngumu.
Kicking and screaming, holding on to this power. Like, if I let go, my life is over. Seriously speaking.
This is a Situation Room, is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting from Nairobi to Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, and Malindi, as well as worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke, live streaming on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, as well as Instagram. Stick around because we're taking a look at the weather and then we'll come and have a conversation about Kanu. We're joined in the studio, somebody who has entered ndani ya studio, ndani, tengesa kidole, akanu, akanu. This is the Secretary General of Kanu, Nick Salat.
Yes, thank you.
It must be vibrant. If it's
this
slow,
is not thinking, this is pointing.
And if you move it slowly, it might mean wiper.
Yes.
So it has to be vibrant.
Tengesa kidole. Tengesa. 9 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good morning.
Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning, and we see that at 18 degrees we'll have a high of 26 and a low of 16 today. In Nakuru, where we look at clear skies, a possibility of rains later on with highs of 26 and lows of 14. In Eldoret at 16 degrees, it's clear skies with highs of 26 and lows of 13. Expect rain showers later on in Kisumu, currently at 22 degrees and a high of 30. In Mombasa at 27 degrees, highs of 32 today with mostly sunny conditions. In Nyeri at 17 degrees, partly cloudy conditions for now. Expect rain showers with highs of 24. And finally in Malindi at 28 degrees, it's going to be a warm day with highs of 32 and lows of 27.
Breathing life into the 90s.
Wherever you go, remember you can tune into the conversation on
94.4 Spice FM,
as well
Nairobi.
as YouTube, Spice FM KE. Joining us now on the hot seat is Nick Salat, the Secretary General of the Kenya African National Union. Chama ya Kanu, chama ya Jogo.
Yeah, Baba na Mama.
Baba na Mama. It's still Baba na Mama.
Yeah.
You still consider it Baba na Mama.
Home, east, west, home is best.
Home is best. Karibu sana, Nick.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for joining us this morning. Of course, we saw you during the week of National Mourning when you'd lost the icon of the party, Mzee Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. And you said that you're going to have some 40 days of working as Kanu to see what you can do to leave the legacy that Mzee Moi left and to ensure that you live by those ideals. Are you still in those days?
First and foremost, thank you. And I must commend you for this very beautiful station you have. I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Wow.
This is, and I have followed Spice, and I never put the face to the people behind the mic. And thanks, guys. It's a different page turner for this kind of line of work.
Thank you.
You guys are conversing well. You're reaching out to Kenyans and in a very, very mature way. Different, actually. Let me just call it different. Thank you so much. Maybe clarification about what I said on the day that we were laying the second president to rest. That 7 days is a traditional way of mourning for the family. So, which will end on Thursday this week. And then now we will have 40 days of remembrance, because not many people, as you saw, the crowd was huge, the lines were long, got a chance to say something that the second president, touched their lives on or about. We are going to have 40 days where now we have free speaking, where more people will be given a chance to speak. And we also, from that, we want to also use that as a way of molding our own, creating Kanu, a rebirth of the party. And you can only have a rebirth of the party through utterances of those who believe in the party. And they will tell you this is the way we would want you to direct the course of the party. I was from the Morning Express this morning, and people are asking, what is it that is ailing this country? It's us, the political parties, because the value that we've put in the presidency is so high that everybody wants to go there. But had we, as political parties, if we had ideologies that we can sell to the people and they believe in us, because what I believe needs to happen is that people don't know a taxpayer is a Kenyan. It doesn't have a tribe. And what is it that you as a taxpayer need. It's me to say, I want to spend your money in this way and that way.
Yep.
The projects that really are going to make your life
Touch
better. Yeah, so
on the everyday
those are the
life.
kind of areas we wish that we as KANU can redirect and tell Kenyans that it is your money that politicians are spending, and you should have a say in that. And the political party should give you the roadmap on how they're going to
spend them.
Yeah, that's it. And that's ideology for us. So what we don't lack, our ideology is the presidency. So that's why everybody wants to go there. That's why everybody is killing for that.
So what is KANU's ideology?
I want us to say, let's spend, I want us to say from initial, we are actually a socialist leaning in terms of spending. We are more from the mwananchi. You spend what you have, and that's why in the very critical years, when funding was not coming for President Moi, he knew that if mwananchi is not fed, that's the worst person. And he kept feeding. But there was no much development because there was no money to use for development. But he made sure that food, the ingredient that keeps every one of us alive, was affordable. Available and affordable. Yes.
So now when you talk about now, you're saying you're thinking of the 40 days of, looking back into the party and seeing how you can rebirth and rebrand the party. Are you seeking to change the Jogo into green or something?
We may just slightly
tinker with the
Jogo to actually get because the youth are not the youth of now, the generation of today. Don't relate well to that Jogo. But if it's them and that we've given them to give us a design that they can identify with, and we have a couple of them right now, and we're going to eventually launch that, have a day that we will present to the nation that this is now the brand new Jogo.
What needs to change or what needs to come alive in KANU that will then make it, you talked about relevance just now. What needs to come alive in KANU that will make it relevant today with the problems that the country is facing, with inclusion that needs to happen? What needs to happen in KANU that will make it relevant?
This is a country made of, the composition of this country is about 47, let's say 50 tribes. And with 50 tribes, the second president said that if there is no inclusivity, if there is Kenyans feeling that we're being sidelined, you'll never have a nation. And we want to say, how do we, because even America with 300 years of democracy, it's not perfect. But we are learning from countries like that as we grow, let's not repeat the same mistakes that has happened in 2008, 2013, and also 2017, where we're losing lives. We want to say that pressure we put to have our own as president should not. And that's why we in KANU are supporting BBI. We in KANU want to say, let 2022, not a single blood is shed. No, we don't want to lose the small girl, the famous small girl that we lost in Kibra. Was it Kibra or
Kisumu?
Kisumu.
Yes.
We cannot have innocent lives, losing innocent lives who have no role to play. But because of our fight to have our own to be the leader, that's why we need to demystify the presidency. And we need political parties to reduce so that we fight to have space in political parties that have ideology on how to spend. Kenyans have not identified one thing, that it is their taxpayers' money that politicians are using. And now if you give the presidency the authority to decide where the money goes, that's where every Kenyan will focus on and want their own to be there. And we will support BBI in terms of taking pressure on the presidency and having an inclusive Kenya where everybody belongs. And if you look at the President Moi's cabinet those days, I'm sure we're not that young here. Yes, he's very young. He's very young.
People have coughs.
Yeah. He's very young. So if we look at the composition of President Moi's cabinet then, he tried his level best to have an inclusive cabinet. And where Kenyans felt, okay, tuko na mutu yetu huko. Even that thought that tuko na mutu yetu huko, that my ideas and my thoughts are represented there, kept a country in a calm position. So to me, as a political party, we want to ensure that we have a country that has inclusivity.
So inclusivity for you as KANU, and you're saying that you're supporting BBI, what does it entail? Is it expanding the executive, having a parliamentary system of government, having multiple deputy prime ministers and prime minister. What is it?
What it means is, what BBI stands for is, to us as KANU, is to say the way the structure exists today, you cannot call it inclusive. You look at it that somebody can decide today that I can have my own tribesmates right from all positions. We want to say, let us have an inclusive composition in terms of the seats and in terms of that.
How do we achieve that?
We achieve that by not necessarily creating. You see, like for example, you can the parliamentary system where members of parliament can be made into can sit at the cabinet. That to me is better, because now that very same member of parliament will go to their own in Amagoro and will be part of the cabinet decision-making body, and that the people of Amagoro will know that they're included in government.
They're in government.
They're in government. So to me, exclusion is what will lead us to the same old problem we've had in 2013, 97 and all, where every election we are counting the number of people we lose.
Do you want a prime minister, an executive prime minister?
I want.
As KANU?
We want an executive prime minister. Yes.
And how many deputies?
2.
2 deputy prime ministers. So an executive prime minister, 2 deputies,
Yes.
and then the cabinet to come from parliament.
Yes.
Now, one of the reasons why, of course, the argument that was being fronted in the Constitution of Kenya 2010 of having the executive coming outside parliament was part of that, was part of trying to disperse off the imperial presidency, where the president was also using his cabinet and his powers to manipulate parliament. But when you have ministers coming from parliament, it means that you are basically playing, the executive is also playing a role in the legislature.
I look at it from the lack of feeling that the decisions that are being made that will touches on the lives of everyday Kenyans is done by people who do not have the mandates of the Mwananchi. And when you have members of parliament occupying the position of ministers, there is a clear connection. So to me, what is happening today, as you're saying, then there was the presidency, the executive presidency then. To me, I would want a position where I feel that my member of parliament, sitting where he is also in the cabinet. And those decisions really are mine, because I had a direct role in electing that person. And that is why there is a clear disconnect between the CSs that we have today and the common Mwananchi. Because they are from another school of thought. They are from the different hierarchy in terms of where how they came up, and these are executives from corporations.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with politics. About connection.
They don't touch on the Mwananchi.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't touch on the Mwananchi. Let's now come back to KANU again. We saw your party leader now as the Rungu.
Yeah.
What does that symbolize for the party?
Well, for us, we looked at that as we don't have politics, cannot allow room for. We don't need a vacuum in politics. But you saw that the elder brother, who happens to be a politician, representing the people of Rongai constituency in Nakuru County, is also a politician. It is a decision that the father must have had with the family, within the family, that this is my elder son. Because he could have stuck with the Rungu and say, I also want. But he was just living up to the father's expectations and decision to say, for my future connection with the rest of Kenyans, it will come through this handover.
Does it have anything to do with positioning him against another leader, if we want to talk about it now? I mean, quite openly. Of course, there's been speculation that him then being positioned means that he is the Rift Valley leader, as it were, and putting out DP Ruto at this point.
We're not the first community to have 2 persons seeking the highest office. You have in 2002 Kibaki and our current president Uhuru, and there was no big issue. Ours is just Matiba. It's never
In
been
92.
an issue for us.
You even had Orengo.
You had Orengo and Raila.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
this should not be an issue. It's just us and moving forward. It will be a decision of the people of
Let
this
the
country.
people decide.
Let the people decide.
What is the Gideon and KANU's stronghold in that region, in North Rift, so to speak?
It's not going to be a walk in the park, but we are up to the challenge. He's had a head start. He's got all the machinery, the state machinery. We don't have that. And with all, you will feature. You see, if you tell somebody stupid, they'll start believing they're stupid. Right. So he's featured too much that he believes that he's the kingpin. But it will be decided by the people. And not only the people from Rift Valley, it will be decided by you and all of us.
It's the country.
Yes, a nation.
If I were to ask a theoretical question, what sort of percentage would you say in terms of influences KANU have, one, in the Greater Rift Valley and in the rest of the country?
You see, we have members of parliament, shock on you, the highest number don't even come from Rift Valley. They come from Garissa, where Duale comes from. Yeah, we have 3. Then you go to Laikipia, we have another 3. And then you go to, we very few members of parliament in
Rift Valley.
In Rift Valley, because we've never had democracy there. We've had issues. We've never had democracy.
What do you mean you've never had democracy?
Pause, because we're going to take off your head here.
Okay. It's a new station, so be kind to me.
I'm sure you don't mean it has never, ever had democracy. Or do you mean, in all honesty, that it has never had democracy?
The way elections have been conducted is what Kenyans are complaining about. The fairness in terms of how leaders were chosen. You know, we've suffered from the deep state, if you know what I mean.
And
rigged elections, because IBC has been the thorn in the flesh.
But
please tell us what this is. What exactly you suffered from?
I'm actually not going there. I'm going to ask him what when KANU was the deep state.
Yes, come again.
KANU was the deep state at some point, was it not?
No, in the one-party system, KANU was everything.
No, KANU was actually deep state even with multi-party.
No, not that. I think from the KANU, you have to give KANU its rightful position in this country.
Perhaps let me explain what I mean, Mheshimiwa.
Please do, yes. Yeah.
When I say KANU was in power, even with multi-partyism, there are very few people who are politicians, even currently, who were never in KANU at some point.
True.
That's what I'm trying to say. Now, KANU may be the dominant party, before multipartyism, but it wasn't an irrelevant party even with the advent. It still isn't irrelevant. My question,
the influence of KANUism still exists.
It still exists. So when I talk about KANU and the influence, I'm talking about KANU as it's currently constituted. What is its influence? Remember, you were explaining, and you started well. We've listened to the numbers, but sometimes the influence has nothing to do with the numbers, really. Because if you have the ear of the person who is in charge, who was also a child of KANU, you will have influence, won't you?
True.
Okay, so let me ask the question again. What is the influence of KANU within Rift Valley, Greater, and the rest of the country?
As I was saying, interest can only be measured according to the members of parliament that we got. So I was getting there.
Yes.
So I started from Garissa, Laikipia, and Samburu.
Yep.
And even we have representation in Kisii. So I wanted to specifically say why there was a lot of repressed presence of KANU in Rift Valley.
Thank you.
Because that repression stemmed from one of us who felt that should KANU be allowed
to
thrive within, he would have lost that space that he was trying to endear himself to the rest of Kenyans. So there was a lot of pressure to ensure that a certain direction in terms of how the people of Rift Valley were to elect their leaders was achieved. So be it what we are complaining about IEBC and the
nomination process for the parties,
and also interference on parties that even outside your own party, you had to make sure that weak leaders came. That when it's time,
you had weak candidates in KANU.
And if that was not achieved, you had to go to the next level, use IEBC. And if that was not achievable, you had to use now the deep state.
Hey, so you're saying there was a serious scheme to ensure that KANU does not have,
And that's why going
and
back
that deep state still exists.
No, we are happy now that
It's gone.
Through BBI we hope the level playing field, we will achieve a level playing field.
Or a semblance of it.
Yes,
A semblance of level playing field. Basically, what I'm hearing you, Mheshimiwa, saying is when you look at the last election in the Rift Valley, there was direct manipulation of the process.
True.
And this direct manipulation ensured that KANU also did not have strong candidates to field against the stronger parties in the region. And the stronger party in the region here being Jubilee.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Why was KANU sitting back and watching this unfold?
We never sat back, but there's only so much you can do once you have a skewed IEBC, once you have a skewed administrative system that is not really willing to give or protect the level playing field that should exist in an election. So to us, we are happy that those who have seen that we cannot go into 2022 with the way things are, that we will push through BBI to really change that which we know is definitely awaiting Kenyans in the next election. Reduce the pressure we put on the presidency so that it's not about our turn to go. It's about what do we do with the taxpayers' money. What as a political, what is the intention? You see that Kenyans divorce themselves from being a taxpayer and following up on their own dollar. Just you cannot divorce yourself from the money you earn, talking to us every morning here, and being paid for it, and then go and just leave it there, not watch where it goes and how it's spent.
Well, I mean, they've been given the feeling over time that you don't really have a right to ask. You know, by the time you put somebody in a position of power, the responsibility towards that individual dies at that point. And we've talked about it just a few minutes ago. So now how are we going to get Kenyans, I mean, you're speaking as KANU, how will you get Kenyans to then understand that in the position of power, they are the ones who actually have the seat?
We take a pause, Mheshimiwa.
Yes.
Let's take a look at traffic and then you come back
Thank
and you
you.
answer that question.
Thank you.
On how you're going to ensure that Kenyans start looking at things differently. Good morning. We have in the studio on the hot seat Nick Salat. He is the Secretary General of KANU. Of course, we're talking about KANU rebranded, KANU succession politics in the Rift Valley and countrywide. Good morning.
All right, still heavy traffic situation on Langata Road all the way from Kobil. Avoid the route if you have another one. So if you're using the southern bypass, hoping to use Langata Road then to get onward, you might want to stick to Mombasa Road at this point. Things are back to normal on Wayaki Way, and it's going to take you a very short time to get where you're going now. Getting into the CBD, heavy traffic at Haile Selassie Uhuru Highway junction. So if you don't have to get into the CBD using that option, please do not. We don't know why that is the case, but there's serious traffic there. Other than that, everything else seems to be okay. Mombasa Road not as bad as it was earlier, using a shorter time than to get in. We still have the same situation that we did in industrial area, moving very slowly this morning, but moving all the same. Spice FMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter. For now, it's not so much traffic madness. We'll see what it's like in a short while.
Breathing life into the 90s.
So you are going to answer that question. What is it that
94.4 Spice FM,
we get the
Nairobi.
message right this time?
We want to be an ideologically based party. We want to really share and bring, we want to have a connection between what a political party does and what is it expected to do. That means we have a pool of monies that is put together for the benefit of all of us. And how should that money? So you need to say in advance. Don't wait for the budget and say that it's been done elsewhere. You need to have actually brought Kenyans on board from day one. And that's what is lacking in this country. There is a disconnect between what a political party goes to do and how, as me now, my people in Bomet, for example, would expect me to come and get some monies from somewhere. There is no monies that are out there. It is all a pool of money that is brought together. And if that mandate is given to you as a party, what are you going to do to make my life better? So we want to be a party that has an ideology on how we are going to prudently spend
manage
the finances of this nation. Because finances of this nation cannot be managed from an individual directive.
If you are saying that, Mheshimiwa Nick Salat, and you are saying that in this particular financial budget making process this year, KANU is involved so much that KANU has already organized people. It has taken them to make presentations to the National Treasury, to the Budget Committee of Parliament, that KANU is involved already. I'd be believing you. Or that when counties are making budgets, that KANU is very much involved in ensuring that the citizenry is aware of the budget making cycle and is participating. I'd believe you. But now it just sounds like words that you're saying.
No, it was a question about what are we, the future.
Oh, it's a future.
The future. What is it that we
Why
want
can't you start now
if
with
we,
this?
No, that's what we're saying. Going forward, by the time we reach 2022,
Okay.
we want to make sure that we are going to let Kenyans know that it is seeking management. We want to seek to manage the resources of this country. And when we given that mandate, this is what we seek to achieve for the betterment of this country. There is no party today that is giving that explanation. It is only a manifesto which is a replica all through and through. But it doesn't.
It's like one person wrote
we just
all
go
of
to the archives, we bring it back, and then put it back again up to the next election, Sako, and people don't relate. So we want to have, if it is a manifesto, it has to really touches on what's real, because what is real to Kenya? Is it the money we've borrowed? Is it the money we have? So based on what we have first, before what we talk about what we're going to borrow, Kenyans have to be on board step by step.
I like what you're saying.
Yes.
What steps is KANU going to take to ensure that this message reaches the very people you would like to support this vision by way of voting?
This is why stations like Spice FM, you come and interrogate political parties. You come and interrogate so that Kenyans can know what a political party's direction wants. What direction does KANU and does Jubilee?
That is one.
Yes.
Specifically, we have 47 counties. How do you plan to reach the 47 counties? Because I am sure you're a national party and you'd like representation, actual representation in terms of people representing you through votes in Parliament and in the Senate and elsewhere. What are the steps that you plan to take to ensure that you reach all these people?
The thing about us as a party is that we are lucky. We have infrastructure. It's only been a sleeping giant. We believe we are to blame for not actually activating our structures across the country.
The infrastructure here.
The infrastructure.
KANU offices.
And people
officials.
And officials. And you cannot go to every corner of this country. There has to be somebody who is known, has heard about KANU.
Yeah.
But now that was then. What we want to know, what we want them to know about the present day KANU moving forward. Because things have changed. The people who are voters today have no connection to KANU. But KANU is a party that exists, but it wants now to connect with the present-day Kenyans and the direction that things are supposed to take in this country. Yes.
So you also talked about, engaging the youth, for example, to tell you what kind of image they'd like to see KANU take. So it sounds to me like you're targeting now a younger audience for KANU. It's like you're trying to think KANU is going to be KANU 2.0 of younger members.
Yeah, if you the voting majority today of Kenyans, 50 plus, 52, let's say even 55%, are the ones 35 and below. And those are the people we want to connect with. That's why we have a youth league. We have reactivated our youth league. And we want to give them prominence in terms of them leading the way our constitution is structured. We are actually going to give them prominence in terms of how they are going to connect with their fellow youth in this country. So we will take a backseat just to make sure that we give them space to grow in terms of also coming to occupy the positions that we are currently occupying, so that they can now be the Kenya of today. Because you can never exclude them. When somebody is 50 plus one, that is where you need to focus on.
But other parties, I have heard, have similar plans to try as much as possible to reach the youth. What is it that you're going to be doing that is different from what other parties are doing?
As I said, we want to give them positions key positions within the party, not only just at the youth league, but also to occupy space at the executive level.
Yeah.
And that's what we've created an office for them. We opened actually last year. They have presence in our office. Some of the youth were paying them. They are actually salaried paid executive positions that we want them to disseminate information about the party using the current mode of communication. And that's what we are saying. We don't want to be left behind. We want to have an active Facebook. We want to have, just to occupy all the media communication platforms that are existing today.
One thing that's came in the times where KANU was the dominant party in this country, of course, they're saying, there were perceptions about friendliness towards women in positions of leadership and then moving forward. I mean, it's divided down the line. Yes, there was friendship. There was a friendly outreach. In other cases, there was a shut door. What is the position when it comes to women in leadership from a KANU perspective and then moving forward?
I thank you for that, because we pride ourselves, the girl child. We want to say the party, even during the one-party system, when KANU was the sole political party then, KANU really put a lot of emphasis to bring the girl child on board. And that we can take pride in. To say that the vibrancy of the women of today, you included, was a product of KANU. And why don't we say we are not detaching ourselves from that? We can only now entrench it in all the positions that we have, because we have a very strong women league also within the party. And we want to also make sure that they do also come and occupy key positions within the party.
Well, many have said that women's league was kind of like, the cheerleading aspect of the party, that they would, kind of just go ahead and, resource development or, using them to mobilize votes and not really giving them positions that, you would say it was at the same place that you would give men. Is that a different perception that you have?
I would not say, because the first, I say we want to go back and say we really played a key role in terms of giving the first women minister to sit at the cabinet. That was during the Moise time. And I cannot divorce myself from knowing that there's no difference between what you can do and what I can do. You can mobilize as well as I can mobilize. So if you have that ability, why are you not going to be given a chance? So we want to give you a chance. And not give you a chance, to make you be yourself. Why should we give you a chance? And you have the ability to
So the platform, perform. What you're saying then is the platform is there.
It's there.
Are you encouraging it, or you're just saying it's there, come and take advantage, or are you encouraging it?
We're not saying we encourage. We know that you have the ability to sit where I am as a Secretary General. I'm not going to say you don't have. You can sit here and be here. So if you can challenge me, or if I can say you're better than me, I don't mind moving aside and letting you come and sit where I am. Because we need vibrancy. And we cannot sit for the party. We don't have to say, I heard you talking about resigning. Personally, I don't mind if I see that she's able to come and do a better job than I can. Because I believe in the party. And I believe she can push better buttons than I am pushing. Why not?
Mwashemewa, you're a politician and you're on radio and you're saying really nice things. How often, forget KANU for the time being.
Yes.
One, the debate you had, we were asking, why is it that when people who are in senior political positions are found to be political or even government officials, why must they actually be forced out? Why can't they take that moral high ground and say, okay, if this is a situation, let me step aside. But that having been asked, let me pause. Do you know of KANU actually discouraging women from taking positions of authority? Because we keep asking, do they encourage? Do they discourage?
No, I said I was very clear. Has the platform been created? Platform just being created, or saying here it is, and we're saying yes, not just because we've created the platform, but saying, I encourage you, go ahead and fill up these positions.
I can give you an example of how you encourage. The courts, for example, have already ordered that political parties should ensure that you're the ones that are reaching the two-thirds gender rule.
Correct.
By ensuring that your nominees, you have very many women being nominated. Is the party working to ensure that you have more women candidates for elections?
You would let me even give you a live example. The slot we got for Senate to nominate, we nominated a woman, Abshiro, the senator from Isiolo. So any opportunity that space belongs to a woman, we will not go out of our way to take it away from them. And we want to say that has been the case. In 2002, we nominated a woman. In 2013, we nominated a woman. Any slot that we got, we've never left there. When we saw that it's the majority are men, before even the constitutional amendment of inclusivity was brought on board, KANU has never left that space, because in 2002 we did not have to nominate, but we nominated two. One a professor from Western, and Kano, also a professor from Kericho. So those were key women, and they played a big role in parliament. If you go to the Hansard, you can see we did not make a mistake. They contributed very well in all the discussions that took place in parliament.
Now, how about elective positions?
Elective positions.
So making sure that, for example, if you're saying you're participating in elections countrywide on MCA, MP, woman rep, Senate, and those positions, governor positions, ensuring that if you look countrywide, Nick Salata, the Secretary General of the party, you're asking your Director of Elections, let's have more women, at least a third of our candidates countrywide being women.
We, like for example, in Lesuda, and I'm sure she's also a communication. She won the elections. She stood and won the elections in Laikipia. Is it not Laikipia, but
in
Laisamis, yes. And countrywide, we encourage, because it's all about finances and supporting them. We encourage those who have what it takes. Those who say, I can take on the men, I can stand. You see, as much as we would want to say we want to live by the 2/3 majority requirement, we're saying there are women out there who feel, I don't have to go for that push. I am worth my position. Because there's never been a day that there is less of that. We are equal in classroom, we are equal in everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Even in political
in political space. So there are women who feel, the Karoas of this world, who know they can take on men, because that space has been created. So we wish to encourage that they should not shy away. That we have today, we have an increase. Look at it in parliament, like from 2002, the number of those who went for election, it's increasing every year. And I'm sure, should that space be given, that they can be who they want to be. And I encourage foreign women groups around the world who come and keep talking to them, because you see, that is what we need. That is what we need, to have them challenged and to stand up and say, I can. And for sure, Bomet, for example, where I come from, we elected a woman
as governor.
My MP, my own MP, Mrs. Laboso, Mrs. Cones. She's a woman. And she stood and taken on men, and she's there. So we want to say those are the kind of people who should not just say, I'm a woman. They are up to the task, and they can stand up and be counted.
They're human beings.
Absolutely.
Now, there have been reports, of course, in the media that KANU is looking to cozy up with the Amani National Congress. True or false?
No, in BBI, we are not cozy. That's obvious. I mean, if the Constitution, the Political Parties Act is very clear. If you want to, there is pre and post. So pre is you engage pre-election and then post-election. But right now, maybe because we are working together under BBI, they also support BBI, we support BBI. And we've been seen together in functions, and we have.
Why would people pick on this particular party? Why would people look at KANU and the Amani National Congress? You're not the only parties that are supporting BBI. Ford Kenya is supporting BBI.
We've had
Maendeleo Chap is supporting BBI.
Yeah, even Wiper.
Even Wiper.
We've been associated with Wiper. Maendeleo Chap we have been. These are the BBI team, and that cannot be. It's very clear. If I want an association with you, there are only two ways of doing that: pre
and post.
But Eric,
so the connecting fiber here is BBI. That's what would bring you together. Is that what you're saying?
Because we know if we do not pull together, we are doomed.
Would I be wrong if I say the connecting fiber is actually KANU? The head of Wiper was very prominent in KANU not too long ago. The head of Amani Party was also very in KANU in the strongest way possible, again, not too long ago. So these are people you actually know.
So the chickens are coming home to roost. Is that what we're talking about here? That everybody's just basically
years.
coming back to
their
where their affiliations were in the first place. Coming back to the rooster.
Yeah, Kibaki said KANU will rule for 100 years. And I don't think his prediction is very right. That's why when I asked them to Tingiza in Kabarak, and everybody who did not Tingiza, because I know I can give, as my friend has put it here, it is all of us. We've been through Kanu. And I'm not seeing anybody who is potentially to give a good run for the presidency or the prime minister will not be far. They will still be Kanu children.
Well, they can be Kanu children, but as long as they're not Kanu, then Kanu is not benefiting from that. Kanu cannot claim, for example, today that it has a presidency.
We can, by extension only.
Yeah.
But what we're saying, we want to grow Kanu as Kanu.
So that now we have a Kanu president.
Correct.
And a Kanu prime minister.
Indeed.
Let's ask the question that perhaps most people are wondering about. The issue that you came into as you walked in.
Yes.
The issue of public servants, private space, state officials, and the morality code. Should people resign from office if they're found culpable?
I think it is about time we actualize that particular act, that chapter 6, isn't it?
Mm.
That we actualize it, because there is no need to have a chapter that we keep violating day in, day out. And I think for only Kenyan to have, for us politicians to be accountable, you just resign. You will not die. You won't die. You won't die. I think people fear that once you resign, and you see that's what, there's life outside politics.
Yeah.
I've been out for what? This is second time now, and I'm here. I'm at the spice.
You're
I'm
healthy.
spicing
You're
things
okay.
up. I'm spicing things up. So, yeah.
So, but at what point should someone take responsibility?
When you know that you will interfere with whatever investigation is happening, when you know that you are responsible. For me, and I know what you're talking about, I think you need to, even if you're not going to resign, tell us. I've actually asked all those who have been mentioned within my office.
Let's be very direct.
Yes.
We have an allegation about the office of the deputy president, and people have been taken to court, and it's about an alleged arms scam. This is what we are referring to, right?
Yes.
And saying the office of the DP has been tainted.
It is.
So what action should the DP take?
And it's not the first time either.
It's a crime scene.
What action should the DP take?
He should first, before what Kenyans can ask of him to do, he should act on those officers within his docket, within his office, to either resign or be fired, because that is what Kenyans would expect from his office. Not to say you are there for a minute or 23 minutes. You can kill many people within that. You can kill a whole country
in 23 minutes.
In 23 minutes. And that is what Kenyans are asking for. How can my boardroom be used for such that's a big figure, 40 billion, and you have no idea. And we know how much you love money.
Right.
Yeah. And we know how much you like to dish out money. Yeah. Now we know. And that's the kind of thing. You only 40 days. Yeah, they say take 40 days. And I think the 40 days
this is the 40th.
This is the 40th it has reached now. And
are you saying that this is pointing to answering some of those questions, of course, in the public domain? Where does the money come from?
Where does the money come from? Come on, guys. And 40B, I will be dishing out. If I get 40 billion right now,
there's nothing you couldn't do.
I will do. Come on, I will dish out 10 million every day.
Please remember me.
Yeah, give me a call. Yeah.
So, I mean, in this case, with all that we've seen, it seems that a lot of times, a lot of these scandals that we see, this particular officer's his name comes out. So would you say at this point, apart from the officers or instigating or putting up any kind of investigation, he then must say at this point, he then or anybody else around the country, you would say, okay, I resign, I step aside from this position, find out what you must.
Yes, and the law is very clear. Even if we commit murder together, everybody will be held accountable individually. And that is what should pertain here. A crime scene, and it has happened in your office. You cannot say, and then go point another office, answer yours first. Don't tell us that, look there, you're giving us a money trail or whatever you did. First show us that you're being responsible about the 23 minutes that these people. And then you ask DOD also, we'll ask DOD to give us their to do the same. So don't go and say, go DOD, go where, and then start bringing people, because very well we know who is, let me tell you, whatever will come out of this is going to come home to roost, as you put it. Now, on the doorstep, it will come to his doorstep. Because I'm told, even at the foreign Poland there are fingers pointing at what is happening in Poland and who is there in Poland, who has a connection with somewhere.
Let me ask
Who
the
sits
question.
in the
Yes.
embassy in Poland?
You see, my question was broad deliberately. We have a case that the minister in charge of our health services is actually answering to in the Senate. She's had issues. She's been called by the Senate committee that deals with some of these issues. She has been questioned. The Minister of Defense was mentioned in this scam that we speak of. So we've had ministers mentioned before. Now, taking the precedent of where our head of treasury and the principal secretary actually had to leave, should public servants such as the ones I've mentioned, what is the threshold for mentioning at the point, in your opinion, at the point which then it becomes imperative for them to resign?
Well, by arresting. If an arrest has taken place, that is direct.
That's enough.
That's enough to say, I'm stepping aside, because investigations will start. And if it starts and you're still in that office, and it happened in this spice, I'll take this cup away and say it wasn't here. Okay. So the moment we have an arrest and implicating an office, those people who have been mentioned should automatically resign.
You're a politician. Your fellow politicians will always argue that, politics is weaponized. Or the war on corruption is weaponized politically. So I can come and effect an arrest within your office just to get you out.
Well, you can be arrested. If you are innocent and taken to court,
It will tell.
it will tell. I mean, you have to say, show me the evidence. But here you're being told you spent 23 minutes here. And you're the one claiming, yes, they were in my office for 23 minutes. What cannot happen
Only
in 23
23.
minutes? Children can be born in 23. How many children are born in Life can be created within those. How many lives have been created in 23 minutes? So we want to say it has been pointed there. And we need to see him, even if not him resigning, to take steps and say, why did you allow these people to come to my office? And now these people there's a scam which is not being supported anywhere in government, and you're still the second in command. Just step aside.
Take all responsibility.
It is important, and that's the only way. You see, remember Kimunya at one point, he was a scandal was discovered in. He said, "I'd rather die than resign." He ended up resigning. He's in parliament today.
Yes,
He didn't die.
He didn't die. So what's the big deal? He resigned.
You can go and come back.
Yeah, you can go and reinvent yourself.
Coming back to Kanu, is Kanu likely to field a presidential candidate in 2022?
Any existing political party that does not aspire for the highest seats, then that does not deserve to be a political party. It should actually not even feature anywhere. I answer your question. We will feature prominently at all levels of elective positions.
Who's likely to be your candidate?
We will go through the process.
Well, what's the process for Kanu?
The process is the normal party elections, and if so wish, if anybody doesn't show up and Gideon Moi presents himself, which I think so far in our party he seems to be the one leading the pack,
Front runner.
Nobody has given any indication of challenging him. Then so it will be him.
What about you, Mheshimiwa? What are your aspirations?
Where the position will be dictated by the outcome of BBI.
Thank you.
Prime Minister.
You never know.
You never know.
Prime Minister moja apande hii. Now, of course, if we were to have a presidential candidate in the name of Gideon Moi,
Correct.
and then you have a presidential candidate in the name of William Arap Ruto, now this is going to be a battle of titans in the North Rift.
Yes.
What's the preparation for that? I mean, how do you see that playing out? As you've told us,
One
deep state played you out in the last election.
One will go to the opposition, like we did in 2002. The leader of the opposition was Uhuru Kenyatta, and the president was Mwai Kibaki.
Oh, so you're saying one of them will be president, the other will be in the opposition.
Well, he has responded well to that one.
Yeah, he's played it very safe.
No, he's played it well. That is why, in that regard, I actually have nothing else I want to ask him except Amani Party have been mentioned. We've mentioned Wiper. There's no mention of ODM or Jubilee, which are the dominant parties in the country.
Yes. As you can see, the handshake is ODM, Jubilee. I think those are the people who will get this country back to on track. Yeah. Those are the people who will see Kenya have a better future without all these acrimonies, and they will guide this baby to success.
To success and
Yes,
birth.
yes.
Do you want a regional government?
I think important devolution is key, so that also you would take resources back. Our villages
Back to the
back to
people.
the people. Our villages are not the same anymore, even though it is in debts, but we still see the
Significant
fruits, changes because of devolution.
Nick Salat, Secretary General of KANU, thank you very much for
Asante
joining
sana.
us.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for tuning in as well. Just keep it right here because we have a conversation going on, and the conversation happens on our social media platforms as well. Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
All right, problems now in the city of Nairobi, Gitanga Road, all the way to Kangwari. Of course, we see because of the road situation, this is causing some traffic. The roads are actually in a deplorable situation, and that means traffic has slowed down significantly. On Ngong Road, trying to get to the city mortuary roundabout, causing a bit of problems right now. This is where we see pockets of traffic happening. From Kibera to Ngong Road, problem there. Very bad. Pan-Afric Nyayo Stadium Museum Hill to the CBD, Ngara to the CBD, very bad at the moment. For some reason, traffic outbound is causing some problems. You're going to have to be patient for that. But apart from that, everything else seems to be A-OK around about 9. We'll check about half an hour what's going on. Reach us on Spice FM KE. Give us a call. Tell us what you see, and we'll try to keep you moving.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko,
Well, we are broadcasting
Nigerian
on
by birth,
94.4 in
Kenyan
Nairobi,
by choice,
87.9 in
communications
Mombasa,
expert,
102.5
Pan-Africanist,
Kisumu,
a
96.0,
truth seeker and believer in
96.7
people power,
Eldoret, 90.9 Nyeri,
Eric
and Malindi,
Latin, agent
97.7.
provocateur, the
This
man in
is
the chair,
Situation Room,
seasoned
Kenya's biggest
journalist,
conversation.
news house.
Ndu Oko. The Secretary of State for the United States, Mike Pompeo, is in Africa.
He is. Of course, Mike Pompeo making his virgin visit to Africa as the Secretary of State, visiting Angola, Senegal, and Ethiopia, against the backdrop of recent inclusion of some African countries in the list of countries excluded from getting immigrant visas. And the Pentagon, of course, plans to pull troops from Africa. Trump has cut funding for African programs. And there's, of course, been a general lackluster U.S. diplomatic engagement with the continent. So really, once you look at it and you look at the outlook, there really is very little to be excited about. Of course, his trip and the major themes are going to include promoting trade with the US, good governance and the rule of law, while also arguing that African officials and business leaders need to basically look away from Chinese investment. And at this point, it's clear, or it should be seen, that, you know, they're not necessarily looking at fostering engagement or development on the African continent, but looking for ways definitely to counter any kind of Chinese participation that has happened over time. It's been very clear clear that it's a lack of attention that has been paid to Africa over time. We saw that 2 years ago is when you saw what Trump outlined as the inclusion for Africa, and talked about the fact that the African strategy would be rolled out. But that was a year and a half ago, and this is the first time that we see that such visits have actually taken place. And it's clear that what was once the allure is no longer there. But what is clear now at this point is that the dominance, or to retain its position as number one in the world, is very clear. China, of course, has then, in the time when America was talking about cutbacks and, not really looking at its direct involvement in development on the continent anymore, China went ahead and made some moves. Russia went ahead and made some moves. And at this point, when now the US has woken up from what it would be a development slumber, they've realized, okay, if anything, be able to then garner or at least get back to world dominance, one of the main things that we have to do is counter the moves that China has made. And with this visit, I see it's very clear that that is what the US is doing. Not necessarily to foster any kind of development, but to make sure that they take away from the authenticity or integrity of what it is that China may have done in terms of cementing and fostering relationships on the African continent. And it's clear that in this case, it's not necessarily about development, but if anything, it is about countering the initiative by the Chinese on the continent.
You sound like a Kenyan politician.
Do I?
Yeah. That thing of saying, whatever is happening here, don't look at it this way. It's a political gimmick. This has all been politicized. It's a war of politicization. Look, isn't it possible that America could actually just be looking at how to increase its own influence?
This is exactly what I'm saying.
Not necessarily. Don't look at it from countering China.
This is a byproduct.
Countering China is something, yes.
No, I'm looking at it like that this is a byproduct of this. In making sure that they do counter anything that China would have done while they were in their development slumber, is to now come back and say, well, we need to do this. But one of the ways that they are going to be able to achieve this is by countering. It would be a byproduct of this counter effect. It would be a byproduct of this counter move. And to say, look, you know what? This is nice, but here's what we have to offer. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at those countries that are in stages of development, in their tradition, in their transition to democracy, and we're looking at their stability, which is what they've talked about in this 3-nation trip that they've taken. And these specific countries have been chosen because of where they are in terms of their democracy and where they are in terms of their transition from one place to another. So coming then to say, look, we see what China has been able to offer you. We see what they've been able to do. But they're not going to take it lying down. They're not going to say, okay, well, we'll just sit and continue to extend the hand of development outreach. No. They're actually going to come and say, we also realized at the same time that we may have been asleep, but that doesn't mean that we are going to take the moves that China has made on the continent lying down.
Yeah.
They're still going to come out as strongly as they can to make sure this has happened.
I agree.
Why wait for 18 months? Why wait for 18 months when the strategy was rolled out?
That you're saying, I'm just disagreeing on it being reactionary. Because it's not the first time. When Barack Obama visited Africa, he went to Ethiopia. We have had secretaries of state who've come to Kenya very many times. We've had, like Kenya's president, Uhuru Kenyatta, has been to the States twice.
Yes, but at that time, we didn't have the kind of agreements, or we didn't
We
see
still had those kind of
we
agreements.
didn't see the kind of outreach that China has made on the continent.
We
At
still
that
had.
time, no.
In the last 7 years
In
of
the
President
way-
Uhuru Kenyatta, we have had China's
no,
influence in
no.
Africa.
In the way in which it happened in the last 12 months, and I'm talking between January 2019 and December 2019, where you had specific meetings that were called of leaders to come and sit down and let's have a talk. It did not happen before
Which
2019. When we talk about the Russia-Africa summit, it didn't happen before 2019.
Yeah, but the China-Africa summit has happened before.
In
The Japanese-Africa summit has happened
in the
before.
way in which it happened, we saw more in terms of the handouts that would be the loans that were given to Africa happened between 2018 and 2019. We did not see it in the manner in which we saw it. Did not happen before these years. Even when Obama was in power, when Obama was still the president of the US, still could be seen that China had not come out, stuck
When
its
Obama
neck
was
out
president
as a
of
leader,
the US,
as a global
the
leader
president
of the
himself
world.
visited Africa. His secretaries of state, Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, visited Africa.
And was it not clear that they had a handle on what was going on?
Of course they did.
Exactly, and that's
So
what I'm saying.
It's not reaction. It's not that now
in
Mike
this
Pompeo
case,
coming to these three countries is reactionary
They had-
and is different from what America has done
They
over
had
the last 2
all-
decades.
They had all the time. They rolled out the strategy for Africa 18 months before he made his trip. They rolled out the strategy and sat. Didn't talk about it. Didn't make any moves.
So what did the rolling out entail?
That's the thing. They announced it and did nothing. This is exactly what I'm saying. I'm not the only one saying it. You mean
we didn't see them do anything?
They
They didn't
didn't
come.
They didn't actually do anything. And
So
you can
can we
actually
say
hear
that
this from analysts within the United States who said, actually, this is nice. We had a strategy for Africa. And we talk about we
Was it
saw
a new strategy?
in this year is when we see that they talk about cutbacks in terms of immigration policies, and we saw that announced even just 3 weeks ago. Before that, you didn't see anything major. We saw that there was going to be a cutback in funding. That happened. But in terms of anything, nothing else really happened. And this is a thing that has also come and has also received criticism from many quarters, even within the United States government. We seem to have a strategy for Africa, but that's really neither here nor there. Nothing has really happened. Now we see this, and
So
I'm
they-
saying that
they-
it cannot be ignored, that it has come at a time whereby the influence or the activity by China in Africa is significant, that it cannot be ignored. It can't be ignored that it has come at this time. And they see very clearly that if they sit back with the lackluster attitude that they've had over the last 2 years and allow this to continue to happen, coming to knock on the door, it's likely that there will be nobody to open it.
But you seem to put forward the idea that in the absence of this intervention that you speak of, the African plan, that the U.S. has not had a certain foothold or hasn't had a strong position in the countries that these people are visiting prior to this visit? Or are you saying they want to strengthen what already exists?
It's clear that they spoke about these three countries, Ethiopia, Angola, and Senegal, as being in a transitionary period from a place where they were quite unstable to now attaining some kind of stability and wanting to do something for their countries.
Yep.
And those are the people that they decided to pick on because they wanted to make sure that their influence is felt great amongst these countries where nobody necessarily made a move towards them previously. And this was very clear in terms of their strategy. These are the poster children of our new and renewed influence in Africa, we are going to use.
Do you think America had a
this.
hand in whatever is happening in those three countries? For example, do you think America had a hand in getting Haile Mariam Desalegn out and bringing Dr. Abiy Ahmed into Ethiopia as leader, or getting the new leadership in Angola?
Nothing
or
is
in
impossible.
Senegal?
Nothing is impossible. Of course, it has been said very many times in Angola, for example, that political parties with the ideologies that they have been greatly influenced by external forces. And of course, America has been named in particular.
So America has played a part already. It's not new, therefore, that what they're doing now
it cannot be ignored
is
that
following a lull in activity.
Yes, and then they come and physically cement that. It cannot be ignored. Absolutely not. It cannot be ignored to say that, they could have gone anywhere. They operate in different ways.
And they will go.
They operate in different ways. We're likely to see another visit from another U.S. secretary in this current administration. It's very unlikely that we'll see another visit for the next 3-4 years to Africa. Unlikely, if we look at the pattern and how things have changed over time.
Why?
In this current, it's going to end, and it's going to be over in a few a few
but you're saying
months.
3 to 4 years. Why?
So that what?
You're saying a next visit in 3 to 4 years is
When is the last
unlikely?
time? Yes. When is the last time we saw visitors from the U.S.? About 3 years ago, isn't it? If we look at the pattern and how it has been happening, this is what is going to happen. So at this time, and the messages that they're sending are very clear, and what they're doing is very clear. So that if they lay that foundation, anything they build in the near future will be upon this foundation that they're making. It is not insignificant that they are visiting in the manner in which they're visiting at the time at which they are visiting. And I'm saying that their influence will be manifested or felt is a byproduct of this counter initiative that they're making to what China is doing on the continent.
But let me ask a simple question. You see, the focus seems to be China and, of course, the U.S. But there's a world power that doesn't seem to come to this equation. I want to focus on Japan because people keep talking about Russia, but the thing that they don't seem to understand is that if you look at what you call the G8, what are they now, G12 or are they G9? Nonetheless, the countries of the West which have the greatest GDP on the planet and which we are told contribute to in excess of 51% of what is owned globally, Russia does not feature even in the first 8. No. Their GDP, what Russia has in plenty is arsenal. But if you're talking about the industry, the growth of the economy, and they also have an understanding of expanding their influence, better than many other countries. But I want to talk about Japan. Every year or so, Japan has a conference. It's actually named very auspiciously the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD. One doesn't hear of it, just like unless you are interested, you will not hear of JICA, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency. You won't hear of it. But the influence is actually really great. You find them in all over the world. You find them on this continent being involved in very major developments. But there isn't much noise about it. You do not hear them jumping up and down. You don't hear of the equivalent of their Secretary of State coming here making noise. We even had the Japanese Prime Minister visiting this country. In fact, not much noise was made about it, but the person did come.
Right, and that's actually not their way of doing things. They're not interested in this manner.
The reason why I'm putting forward this particular argument, I am saying that if you're talking about influence, lasting influence and endearing influence that isn't even intrusive and which is unlikely to have the collateral, okay, that U.S. influence does. Because U.S. influence, much as it's much touted as being what it is, what it also has is a collateral of reprisal. They come in, they do what they do, and then they make enemies. The greatest point in recent history was what they do to the Kurds. They supported the Kurds for the longest time, and then they withdrew. And by withdrawing the troops, what did they do? They exposed these Kurds to slaughter. Okay? If you look at the issues that America had in Latin America, 60s, 70s going onwards, and what brought about groups like the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, what brought about the leftist-leaning governments in Latin America, was because prior to that, in the 60s, 50s, the American government had supported dictators who enacted horrors that you can't even imagine on their own people. There was a second wave of it when they had now military dictators who also enacted these. Latin America, countries like Chile are still grappling with these issues. People are being arrested for crimes they committed 30 years prior. American influence. So when you're talking about American influence and the influence that they hope to exert in Africa, what guarantee is that this particular fallout? Because they seem to bring their influence, and with it, there is always a negative fallout.
A big one.
Yes.
It doesn't guarantee it. It just means that this is obviously it's an option that they've taken. It is an option that they have taken. And they're going to those countries which people would say, okay, well, ask the question, why is it that they've decided to go this way? And it is clear that they're looking for new ground upon which to exert this influence while they were asleep. Because we've never had an administration in the last 20 years. You've not had a U.S. administration that at the beginning of the administration, when it looks at bilateral ties with Africa, have said, actually, what we're doing, we're cutting back. It hasn't happened.
Okay. The conversation continues. Let's take a look at weather and then we continue. The 17 minutes past 9 o'clock. This is the situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
All right, looking at weather conditions in Nairobi right now, we see partly cloudy conditions with a possibility of rain, currently at 20 degrees. In Nakuru, it's mostly sunny, rain expected later with highs of 27 and lows of 14. In Eldoret, it's clear skies, sunny conditions later with highs of 26 and lows of 13. In Kisumu, rain expected. The chance of rain later with partly cloudy conditions right now, currently at 24 degrees with a high of 31 and a low of 13. In Mombasa, mostly sunny conditions this morning. Partly cloudy conditions will follow later with a high of 32 and a low of 26. Rain expected later on in Nyeri with highs of 24 and lows of 15, currently standing at 19 degrees. And taking a look finally in Malindi at 29 degrees now, highs of 31 and lows of 27.
So here we go. This is
Talk Radio, only on 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's a reactionary move that they're making. Reactionary move because of what
Mature,
China has
intelligent
done.
talk every morning.
While in the
You don't
initial
think that they're
stages,
actually rolling out their own strategy? Yes,
No,
it's reactionary, yes.
because
and
in
they
the
have
very
they have to
beginning-
factor in what's happening.
in the very beginning of this administration, it was very clear what their stance was towards Africa. Cut back on a lot of the funding, restrict a lot of travel. That's what it was. They were not shy about this at all.
Mm-hmm.
It then, when you look at the chronology of how things then have happened later on, you then see, okay, there was a heightened movement on the continent.
Have they
by
reversed
other-
that? Have they reversed the spending cuts?
They haven't
Have
reversed.
they reversed
they
the
have-
travel restrictions?
They have not reversed this, but you can see that then still coming means that they understand, okay, we can't 100% cut these folks out, because if we do, what does that mean for us? What
They didn't
would
mean
be
to cut them out, because even during
they
that
did
time,
mean to cut them out, and they were very
There
clear
was-
about
there
that from the
didn't.
very
No,
beginning.
African
no.
presidents
Yes,
were
they did.
visiting Donald Trump on state visits.
What do you mean they didn't
As
mean
long
to
as-
cut them out? They
I-
made a statement
no.
at the very beginning of the
not
administration.
cutting ties,
that
'cause
this-
what you're
I
implying
didn't-
is
no,
that
no,
they're
no, no,
cutting
no.
ties.
I didn't imply. I didn't
have-
say that they
they-
were cutting ties.
they
I
have
said
reduced
they
their
were
spending.
cutting
What did you
back.
mean?
What I said is that they were cutting back on how much they spend, and it was
Yes,
clear.
and they
were
haven't
cutting
reversed that.
back. They
Consider
were cutting
this.
back on how many people you get to come to the United
Consider
States,
this.
whereby
They haven't reversed
previously
that.
it was open. It was
Consider-
open season for
consider-
They
everybody.
still haven't reversed that.
consider
But at the
Doesn't mean that they
same
stop it.
But at the same time as they were doing all that, Ndu, they were still inviting. Donald Trump was inviting presidents from Africa to go
Consider-
and
When?
meet.
When?
To go and
consider
meet.
this.
When?
At the very beginning,
No.
Donald Trump had a state visit welcome for President Uhuru Kenyatta in his first
Consider
term.
this.
To say
in his
welcome
first
as a
term.
congratulations for being
No,
president of Kenya.
congratulations for being president of Kenya.
Consider this.
No.
For
Uhuru Kenyatta was president before Trump.
Consider
When
this.
Trump became president, Uhuru went to for a state visit.
to say hello.
Your,
say hello.
your own president also did a state
say hello.
state visit.
To say
So he
hello.
was still maintaining ties with African
Folks,
countries. That's the
but
point.
still sent
Folks.
still sent a message to say that whereas things have been operating in a certain manner over time, whether you come and visit me or not, whether you come and tell me 1, 2, 3 or not, the stance remains the same, and this is what I have said.
And what is the
And it
stance?
was very clear from the very
What was that
beginning
stance?
that the way in which we have been operating with you in terms of sending out development aid and help, we are going to cut back on it.
Let me
And
say
not
what I
only
wanted
Africa.
No
to
on
say.
certain terms. But
Yes.
we're talking about Africa now.
You may be looking at the outcome of a decision that may not have had to do with Africa but the US. The pronouncements was they
The
wanted
entire
to make
document was called the Strategy for Africa.
All right. I have understood about the document. But the policy that the American president based his campaign on was to make America great
Yes.
again, not to impoverish Africa.
Yes. Claw back on many things.
That's
Claw
what they were
back
doing.
On even the UN spending. Claw
Even
back
their
on
own
that.
spending. What they were doing was trying to make America great again. Now, the document you speak of was what they were going to do vis-a-vis Africa to make America great again.
Yeah.
We were not their focus. The focus was themselves. We are collateral damage.
Exactly. Because now you're looking at a situation whereby they see they've been overtaken by events and understanding that they cannot leave Africa out in terms of their influence, in terms of their far-reaching
Did they
results.
ever- did they ever leave
can't
Africa
They
out?
leave-
haven't left Africa out, Ndu.
It is not the
they
way
ever
in which
leave Africa
Just
out?
the
because
way
Mike
in which
Pompeo is
the
coming
way
to
in
three
which
countries
the
now
way
is
in
not
which
an indication.
the way in which they have been operating previously compared to how they operated in the first 2 years of this administration is definitely different, and that cannot be ignored. It would be myopic of us to say,
But it's a different president.
oh, what exactly? And this is what I'm saying. For you to realize, it is interesting that it is at this time, with the president that they have now, whereby you talk about the fact that in terms of influence, globally, it is not what it was before. Different president or not, globally, they are not where they were.
George W. Bush.
And cannot be ignored.
George
where
W.
they
Bush,
were
when he was
before is
president,
not where they
how
are
many
now
times
in
did
terms of a
George-
global footprint.
How many times did George W. Bush visit Africa?
Tell me, how many times did he?
Maybe once, right? In his presidency. 8 years of his presidency. How many times did he send his secretaries of state to visit Africa?
Carry on.
Right? Not as many, right? So we had Condoleezza Rice coming to Kenya when she was Secretary of State. We had the other secretaries of state. When Barack Obama became president, in the first 2 years, did he send his Secretary of State to Kenya or to Africa? No. In the first 2 years? No. Did he visit Africa? No. Did he visit Africa eventually? Yes, he did. Can we say that because in the first years of his administration, our president has not visited Africa, or our president has not sent a Secretary of State to Africa, is an indication that this presidency wants to sideline Africa? No.
Yes, because the messaging did not change over
and
time.
any time
the
a Secretary of
that
State came to this continent, did
the
he go to every
messaging
country?
came out.
No.
Of course not. But the messaging was clear over time. I am saying at the very beginning of this, whether it was to make America great again or not, whether they cut funding around the world or they didn't, at this time, at the very beginning, it was clear that this is what we are going to do, whether somebody came or not. You didn't see that kind of messaging when Obama took over power. You didn't see it when he came into his second term either. You
What
didn't.
messaging?
That we're going to cut back on the spending. We are going to cut back on the kind of travel that we see around the world.
No.
The whole world went up in arms when he talked about his immigration policy for the world, being Donald Trump.
Yep.
Yes, everybody talked about it.
Yep.
But this is what he started his administration saying.
Yes.
And I am saying that at that
And it's
point,
not because of China.
I am saying that now, with what is happening now, it cannot be ignored that the influence that China then now has on the continent is something that they have taken very seriously into consideration and are saying we cannot sit back while China continues in this manner. They've already beat us. We're not going to keep being beaten. And that's what I'm saying.
And how
Very
have they been
clear.
beaten exactly?
China's number one. Who can't see that? In the world, in terms of a global footprint, China is number one. Yes, you can. You've said it before, CT. It's clear
I've
that
changed
they're
my mind.
miles that they're miles ahead.
Changed my
They're
mind.
miles ahead in terms of their economic
That is
footprint,
true,
and that
Ndu,
then
but
brings in
that's it.
a
Changed my
global.
mind.
The
It's
premise of your
clear.
argument, and that's why I'm having an issue reconciling this. The premise of your argument is Mike Pompeo is coming to Africa now because America has suddenly woken up to the realization that China has made inroads.
I don't think
And
it's
Mike
necessarily
Pompeo is
suddenly.
coming to 3 countries in
I don't-
Africa
no, I don't
to
think
try
it's-
and claw back onto the gains
I don't think
that
it's
China
suddenly.
has made.
I don't think it's
That
suddenly.
is why
I
I'm
think
having a
they've
problem with
realized
that
this.
premise.
I think they've realized this over time, and I think there's certain countries that they feel that they can exert this influence on, at least show them that they would be the ones that they have these good, relations with, and they can capitalize they can capitalize on that at this point. I don't think it's a sudden realization. I think it's something that has come over time and realized that they can't be left out. And there's certain people
And they haven't been.
I'm not
They
saying
haven't been
Remember-
sitting
I'm
back.
not saying that they can go they couldn't
And
go
America
anywhere.
has
I'm
not
not saying
been
that they
sitting
couldn't
back.
go anywhere. I'm saying that it is strategic in these countries that they have chosen to go to, where they realize that
Obvious.
there's a transition happening,
Obvious.
and they say that this is where we can actually see ourselves as the friend of these 3.
Obvious.
Message to be sent out to the continent.
mention to you. Okay, China has never been known to provide us with any assistance for our health care. If there is, I do not know. Right? America has actually been involved in providing aid in almost every sector of the economy. USAID was set up for precisely that. And they are in the country. From here, they do a lot of work within the region. If you are talking about influence, I would argue that China has to catch up, not the other way around, because you're talking about a footprint that has been there for the longest time. China is coming with the infrastructure. The US has been weak in that particular department. It's something that they haven't considered, whatever it is that they have considered. But remember, the Secretary of State is the chief foreign affairs advisor to the President of the US. Chief. And it is his mandate, among other things, to ensure that he carries out the President's foreign policies. But he has something around 12 other functions. One of them is not only to negotiate, but to ensure what you are now suggesting, that the countries that they have relationships with. So essentially, when you see him, you're seeing the president, in a sense.
Of course.
That's why they're very powerful people. But China has come in. We know. Why did I start with Japan earlier on? Japan has been in this country and they've had a footprint for the longest time. They just don't advertise what they say. The UK has been here even longer. The Germans took it even further. They have wanted for the longest time to build us an entire university, a technical university, build for us, not give us, build for us, and then say, here's your university. So when we talk about the influence that China has, let's take it a pinch of salt and focus on where do we see the influence. We see the influence in what? Roads.
Infrastructure, and
Housing.
and loans, not
And
grants.
Loans. Loans.
Not grants.
Not grants. Loans. So, if you're talking about a partner, this is someone we do business with. How many grants have China given us? Do we know of? No. America gives us grants, they write off loans, they do all sorts of things. The relationship they've had with this country is not only long-standing, it's been there for a very long time.
And they continue to
And I'm saying
they continue to.
China
and
are
their
the ones
influence
who
in that
need to
song-
catch up, not the other
The influence
way
on that
round.
front has not waned.
No.
And they continue.
America's influence. America did not come back and, for example, say, we have an agreement called AGOA. Cut it. In
No,
fact,
they're
America,
enhancing it.
They're enhancing AGOA. Right? So by Mike Pompeo visiting these three countries, it's not a reaction to what is happening from China. It's basically just an advancement of what America has been doing with Africa.
No. At this point, it is very clear. At this point, it is very clear. It is very clear that here you are dealing with countries in a manner in which they've never dealt with them before. Speaking specifically to transitionary governments and saying, here we want to be with you at this time. This kind of involvement has not been seen before. When you talk about changeover when we talk about changeover at the place of government and say you're going to a place where now it will be better for you and better for our relations as well, and
They've
in
done the
here
same.
we want to get involved.
They've done the same.
Not
Remember
with these three
Libya?
countries. I'm talking about these three
These
countries
three countries,
specifically.
this is the first time they're having this kind of
That is
transition.
what I'm saying.
And that's what I'm
Exactly.
saying. It's obvious.
No, it's not actually.
It is obvious.
No, it
These
isn't. It
three
is not
countries,
obvious
there's
that this would
transition.
have been the move that they made. It would not. It's not obvious that this would have been the move they would have made. No.
Would we have assumed, for instance, that because President Obama can
Went
trace
to
his
Ethiopia.
Yes, and we know he can trace his ancestry to Kenya. So, how would you read his visit to Africa? At what point did he visit us? Second term, was it not?
Yes.
He still visited.
Now, my point is this. This is Trump's first term, and he doesn't take over from a government that he's creating. He's taking over from a government that other people have been
It's a
part
system.
of. Yes. So, what he is
And
doing
at the
is
very
what
beginning made it very clear that he wanted to change the way in which things had been done.
Yes.
Never shied
With
away
the
from
world.
that.
With the world.
Exactly.
He
And
looked
Africa is
at
part
Iran
of the
and said,
world.
how are we dealing with
Africa
Iran?
is part of the
He
world.
looked
It's
at
not the world and Africa.
He looked at the
Africa is
Kyoto
part of the
Protocol.
world.
This is how I'm dealing with the world
Africa
on
is
Kyoto.
part of the world.
Looks at-
Exactly. And this is
So
what
it's
we're
not
talking
Africa.
about. This is what we're
It's not
talking
about
about right
Africa
now.
isolated
But
China
we are talking
influence.
about Africa now in the context of a trip happening from the government of the United States right now. If we were talking about China, it would have been a case for Japan. If we were talking about a visit to certain parts of Europe, it would have been a case for Europe. But because we are specifically looking at a trip that is happening on the continent and their policy towards the continent, that is what takes precedence.
Yeah, but it's not reactionary to what China is doing. 9:30, let's take a look at traffic and then we continue.
All right, so Langata Road inbound is terrible from the barracks. Unfortunately, not looking really good. It was looking a lot better previously, but now it is a gridlock. Everywhere else seems to be moving very well within the city today, from Thika Road and coming down towards Westlands and entering into the CBD where we had a bit of a clog up before, but that has opened up. People are behaving this Tuesday morning, and you didn't have to exercise as much patience as you needed to previously. So it's looking good, folks. Unless anything else out of the ordinary does happen, do let us know. Remember, it's Spice FM KE, or give us a call on 0719 012 600.
Breathing life into the 90s.
Just so we're clear, so we don't why is
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Well, like I said, it's very clear that whether the plans were in place or not, they need to reassert or reaffirm their position on this continent. And it can be done so very, very easily with countries that we see that are currently at transitionary positions in their time, in their history, in where they're going right now. They need to reinforce and they really need to realign and reemphasize their influence on this continent, and that's very clear.
You know, one could argue that the states that we have in Africa are in a constant state of transition. Political party this, political party that. It's just that we are fortunate our leaders don't pass away when they're in office very often, because if they did...
Isn't it unfortunate?
Did I say it's unfortunate?
Yes, you did.
That wasn't a Freudian slip. It wasn't even a slip. I think my mind just engaged and decided this is what we're going to say while in office. So, because if they did, what would happen is that the transition you speak of, which if you read correctly in Africa, would mean turmoil, would be profound. Look, any state that hopes to have influence outside its borders at any given point in time has to have a plan, has to have a strategy, and they have to implement it. Others implement it quietly. Others make a song and dance about it. But if you're talking about the effectiveness of it, I'm afraid you're going to have to choose the area of the effectiveness, because none of these powers are effective in every possible way you could think of.
Oh, it's impossible for you to. You can't do that.
For instance, and again, as you say correctly, this influence that they want to put across is not for our benefit. The smart ones make it appear, and in all ways you'll see it as you benefiting, because there will be benefit.
Of course, you would have to bring something to the table, Abby.
Yes, but there are countries where you don't see it that obvious. And even if it is, within a short while you realize we're not really benefiting from this thing as we should. Okay? Like, for instance, again, I'm going back to Japan. If you are to ask, what is it that you feel the Japanese have taken from us, something that they've done? You'd be hard-pressed to find it. Yet you'd find the projects that they've initiated and say, they've done this, and we pause. Now, if you ask about America, you'd realize it's not just expanding the sphere of influence, but they have a problem with Somalia. They need to be here. They need to influence God knows who, so they've set up this here. It's obvious. What their interest is obvious. That's why we ask the question, okay, we've seen it, we understand it. What do we stand to benefit?
What's in it for us?
You go and set a base in Lamu.
How is it
going to help us? Because the one thing we've seen it doing, it really attracts terrorists.
Set up one in Djibouti.
And the other one who set up.
Right?
Yes.
0719-012-600. Open up the phone lines. Daniel in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, today I agree with the lady.
Oh, okay.
I go with the lady because of her contribution. You see, I'm asking China in Africa will need an intense effort from United States. China has already grown its influence, maybe in terms of infrastructure. And with China, when we check China, China is just like an hyena. It has gotten its young and it's making its way out. So you see, it has nothing to lose. China has nothing to lose, especially when it comes to trade. And while U.S., they've realized that, United States have realized that they've been giving out aid, but our leaders, don't like countries that comes with the conditions. US has come with the conditions. These conditions are what are making our leaders to run away from US especially. And what you can realize is that these countries that Pompeo is visiting, like Angola and Ethiopia, they've realized that better part of East Africa has been taken by China. Better part of South Africa has been taken by China. So you see, this balancing act will not come out well. And with the conditions that US earlier on, US used to do the travel advisories and travel bans, and also bans on these leaders, and also getting a visa was quite of a condition. There was a time that when you go to the US embassy to seek a visa, there were some conditions that were weird, even to the people who were traveling to US. So I'm asking China from Africa, because China does not come with any condition. Theirs is straight. They don't have any condition in governance and all the rest. But theirs is only that trade, and they are making away with the chunk.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Point made. Asante sana. Have a good day in Kisumu.
Thanks, Daniel.
You too. Yes.
0719-012-600.
In 2017, U.S. remained the largest trading partner of the countries in East Africa, largest trading partner. Trade accounting to 80% of what the trading that we do. China has come in. We're talking about 2020. That sort of lead is very difficult to overtake. You can eat into it, you can have a chunk of it, but to actually get to the point where you're the dominant one, that takes a lot more time than it is, because the aid also comes with institutions that are built to ensure that these things are carried out. And these projects that they have, even if it's a 2017 report that I'm talking about, it isn't as though it was meant for that 1 year. No. Such projects tend to take 5 years, 10 years, 3, 4 years. It's not 1 year, meaning they're still ongoing. So if they had come to an abrupt halt, then indeed the Chinese influence would have been dominant.
Well, of course, you can't see somebody coming and then that you realize that you're going to sit resting on your laurels and not do anything about it. Obviously, they've made inroads, they've secured a position. That doesn't mean that the position is going to remain that way for time immemorial. It is not going to happen. It means that there's constant work that needs to be done to maintain that position. It's like somebody running a race and they outlap the rest of the pack by 2. Does that mean they start walking? Of course not. You have to keep running if you're going to remain in position 1. You don't stop, you keep going. It would be myopic of them to say that, all right, since we've attained this lead, now we can kind of slow down. Obviously not. There's more work that they need to do, and they see this, especially when you see somebody trying to catch up from the back. Somebody increases their speed. You say, folks, are we gonna, because we have a lead here, we're not gonna move? No. You see somebody coming, you're gonna make sure that even if you had said some things before, even if you had stopped to take a drink of water along the way, you realize this person is coming, you are going to do things to move faster.
Peter,
and that's what
Nairobi.
I'm saying in this case is happening.
Good morning, Peter. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, this is Peter.
Yes, good morning.
Only from now, China. China has done a lot to put off America. I support the lead. You cannot say that the America going to Angola and also other areas of Senegal is not reactional. It's reactional. China has done so much in Africa, and America has developed a lot of fear over that. You cannot say right now that is not reactional. It's reactional actually. I can just tell you it's reactional. If they continue sleeping on what they've been doing, then we will overtake them. Yeah, for me it's reactional.
Okay, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
You know, when I hear reactional, I'm thinking what to me would constitute reactional is if the American government and the administrations had taken a backseat on Africa, had not made any inroads toward Africa, had not had any kind of interactions with African countries, and then suddenly they open up those taps again.
The thing about reaction is that it doesn't need to be immediate. That's one thing about reaction that we need to make clear. Just because something happens doesn't mean that because you react immediately is the only time you can react. You can react over time. You can take some time to take into consideration what has happened. And then you say, you know what? This is what we see the trend has been over time. To this, we need to react.
This is what I'm asking. If you look at...
React means obviously act
the last government,
again.
4 years ago, just 4 years ago, not so long ago, 4 years ago, Barack Obama was the president of America, right? And during Barack Obama's time, we saw 2 secretaries of state coming to Africa. We saw the president himself coming to Africa. Then 3 years ago, Trump becomes president. And during Trump's presidency, how many African heads of state and government does he host at the White House? Does he have conversations
there.
Yes,
they went there. But I'm talking
about,
in this case, them coming here
and then now
to cement
here we
their
are,
position.
And now here we are also having a Secretary of State coming to Africa within the first 3 years of his administration, first 4 years of a Trump administration. It's
at a time
if you look at Obama, if you look at Bush Jr., if you look at Clinton, you look at Bush Sr., that is the trend that used to happen.
No, actually it isn't. And I'm saying against the backdrop of what has been happening globally.
What's not the trend?
In a manner like this, I'm saying it's not against the backdrop of what has been happening globally. At a time whereby Kenya, for example, needed more money, who did they go to ask for a second loan? Who?
We went to China, yes. But have we ever gone to America to ask for loans?
Have we been denied?
With what?
No, have we?
With or without conditions?
Yeah, with or without conditions. But have we?
Have you?
Have we gone and have we been denied? How many loans have we sought from America? How many kind of trade deals have we sought from America? We have AGOA. We have that road, that highway that we've been talking about, Mombasa Highway. It's been in the pipeline. What kind of influence has America had? When you say that this is breaking the trend, what trend has been broken here? That's what I'm asking. And
I'll say it again, just in case it wasn't heard the first 3 times I said it. When an administration comes into place and opens up, and the first thing they announce about a policy towards U.S.-Africa relations is a cutback. And then on this same policy where we talk about still development initiatives taking the center stage, and then nothing is done about it after the announcement for at least 18 months. And then you have a Secretary of State who comes in and makes a visit to governments who are in a transitionary period, still wanting to cement their position. Of course, you have to see a change in the trend. I see it clear as day.
Okay, let's pause for a second and ask a very simple question. Are we talking about aid or are we talking about loans?
At the end of the day, all of that comes into influence. Whether you're talking about money that has been given out, whether you're talking about money that has been borrowed, whether you're talking about grants, it's still the person who loans you money all the time is in a position to help you. The person who gives you aid over time is still in a position to help you. Still cemented at that position.
The point you make is valid, but please consider for a single second, you don't have to pay back aid. Loans you do. So, if you're talking about, do you know how much we owe the Chinese government right now as of 2018? $5.3 billion.
As of 2018.
Yes, I don't know what we owe now. Now, if you look at the aid that has been given by other countries, aid.
Free money.
Free money. All right? The top of the list is taken by the US. And not just us. They give the most money. And you know who the recipient of most money in the world is? Actually India, not even us. Okay? Second to this is Germany. And by the way, this is something like 0.8% of their gross national income. All right? UK comes third. These people have a budget for aid. What is the Chinese government's budget for aid?
Let's go to the phone lines as we answer that question. Patrick Azara, good morning.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, good
Fine,
morning.
thank you.
All right. 2 things. First, on the discussions that you had before on resigning and taking responsibility, I really didn't get the difference between resigning, stepping aside, and taking responsibility. Are all these the same things, which I think you guys should probably try and explain. And also on this issue of China, I mean, we shouldn't forget that in 2014, when 50 African presidents, 50 or 51, who gathered in Washington. So this is not new, not something that is happening in the last 1 year. People have been after Africa's resources for the better part of 100 years, and they keep doing that. We shouldn't forget, I think, that right now we're in the 135th anniversary of the Berlin Conference. And just as they sat there to divvy up the resources of the people of the continent, I mean, they're still doing that the same way, and there should be the bigger question for me would be, what are our presidents, our leaders doing?
Right.
They're the ones who take off to Russia, they take off to China, they take off
London.
to the US. To cut deals, but how many of those deals are actually in our interest? What do we get out of them? We know what China gets, we know what the US gets, what is it that we are getting? And I think that for as long as we keep the focus on what the Chinese are doing, on what guys outside are doing, and not look at what our own people are doing in selling us out in many cases. Think of them as a good example. So in what sense do we hold our leaders accountable? They did what they have to sign.
Thank you very much. Good questions and good points.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right. No problem.
Good points there. I mean, first of all, he mentions that African heads of state went to meet with Donald Trump, right? And then now, all these African heads of state, when you're talking about
dealings with these countries, if Mike Pompeo goes to those 3 countries, what is it that those countries are getting out of America, not the other way around?
Oh, it goes without saying, and this is what we're saying, that it goes without saying that there's got to be something that you give them on the table when you're coming to talk about what influence they would have as America. There has to be something that you give them when these bilateral relations are taking place. There's going to be absolutely something that they benefit. If there wasn't, they wouldn't be having the conversation.
They come with a very clear idea of what they want.
Oh, absolutely. They want something.
But what is it that we get?
They want something.
In
but
theory, we are supposed to receive. Americans tend to give us what you call economic and military assistance. That's what they...
Patronizing advice as well. Yes.
No, not really.
There's advice that comes in a patronizing manner.
The people who do that are IMF and World Bank.
Which are the bulk of the United States.
That's their area of speciality.
Yeah.
Yes. But remember, even this patronizing advice that we get, it's not as though it's all wrong.
No.
It's just that it's often misplaced, and the manner in which they insist on implementing it. All right? Not that there's anything wrong with it. No. The idea in and of itself can be wonderful, but the circumstances in which you want to implement it and I cannot in good conscience say that some of these things cannot do good, although they're not intended for good.
Oh, of course not.
But the reality is that good is laced with self-interest.
I see it as global monopoly that's being played here. People are rolling the dice and then still being able to say, well, I'm going to counter this move with what it is that you've been able to do. I'm looking to, of course, maintain my position of influence, and I'm going to roll the dice and see if I can have Park Place or Piccadilly Circus tomorrow. And that's what it is, really. When you look at it, they're having a go at it all over again. So if you make this move, this is what I am going to do. Of course, it's all wrapped up so bureaucratically and so nicely in this that we have interest in what's happening on the continent or anywhere else where their spheres of influence would reach. But we cannot take away from the fact that one move is played and another move is made to counter that.
The phone lines are still open, 0719-012-600. Also, you can comment on Facebook, Spice FM KE, Facebook and Spice FM KE Twitter, and send in your comment. Tag us at CT Muga, at Nduoko, at Eric Latif. It's 10 minutes to 10 o'clock.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Breathing life into the 80s. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Let's stick first of all to America versus China.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
That is trying to there is space for that kind of discussion, and it resonates with reason. But the reality of this global chess game that she's speaking about,
Monopoly.
It's a chess game. It's a game. Everyone tries to.
Who's the queen?
Get their act in. The reason why I brought Russia into this debate is because Russia is seeking to play a very, very dominant role on this continent, and yet economically they're not even as powerful as 10 other countries that form what you call the G12, G whatever. But of significance, they are what you call the Development Assistance Committee. Now this has very many countries. These are the people who are known to actually provide what we call aid. So if China, and they are Western countries, so if China is competing, then what you'd actually be saying is China is competing with the West, not just the US. Because these people have little clubs where they meet and have their little chats. They have NATO, they have this, they have the other, they have the other. Now, for us, if our leaders could only take advantage of this lovely competition that is taking place at our doorsteps, how we would benefit. But they do take advantage of it for themselves, not for us. And yet we are in an extremely unique position. Never in our history have we had no, not really. This amount of competition seeking our attention. Oh, by the way, when we talk about where we can be heard, I think we need to include, there's one lovely city in India where I have just gotten a message from. Is it called Hyderabad? We are not only audible, but we are visible in Hyderabad.
Good.
That you know it. Yes. Now,
Good. Hyderabadi, hello. How you doing?
thank you. Now, we need to understand just how unique and how strategic we actually find ourselves in.
Yes. We are in this position where we are at the table, not as junior partners.
No,
but we can actually
we are
elevate
not.
ourselves to senior partners.
Oh, absolutely. We're at the table without a fork and a knife at this point. Actually, you know what we are? We're at the table and people are sitting on these high chairs and we're actually sitting on a stool. Not really with the face at the top of the table to see what's going on. That's the position that we are in.
We were offered a chair, a stool, and fork and knife, and we've chosen to sit on the floor.
We are refusing. The thing is, we need to recognize that right now there's an empty seat. Even if there was no empty seat, we can demand and say, no, I'm not going to have a conversation with you unless you put me on a chair just like yours. Unless you bring a chair just like yours. And they are going to listen. This is the time that we can have this kind of conversation. This is the time to say, no, look, so we have come to America. Yes, we've come to London. We've come to Tokyo. We've come to Moscow. We've come to Shanghai and Beijing.
Very happy.
Can you also come? What is it that we're demanding of you?
I put this forth very clearly when we were looking at the UK Africa Summit that happened in January, and I said, you know what, everybody now is coming up and they're offering. We are at a unique position as African countries that can actually make certain demands, and we need to also play this game right.
You did put this across sometimes back, didn't you?
Yes, I did, and I said this is the time.
And I opposed you very vigorously.
You did, and here you are now.
The purpose of that was for you to strengthen your argument.
And it was very clear. And now you can see it.
I saw exactly where you're coming from.
Now you can see it clear as day what I was saying at that point. We need to actually be very strategic about what we're going to do with all of these offers on the table. Right. At this point, though, it needs to be also very clear to us at who's playing what at this point in time. And to say that, okay, yes, they could come in and want to cement their position, or they come in and want to do more, but at the same time, notwithstanding, they're not going to sit back and continue letting another country go at it the way in which they have been going at it, to take over to even threaten a position that they have held for so long. They're not going to sit back and just let it happen and come and do a dalliance with, okay, yes, we're still interested in aid, we're still interested in strengthening governments in Africa. My friend, no. They want to make sure that their position that they had held for so long is cemented, and they're not going to let anything deal with that.
I agree with you. And now what I'm saying is, this is not something they're starting now with the Mike Pompeo visit.
I am saying it
America
comes
has
with
been
this specific,
with this
specific administration at this time for them to do it
with
in the manner that they have been doing
Remember,
it. They
this
also
is the same
realize
administration that called in
that
51 African presidents to White House
their backyard
to have that conversation. Yes.
But in this case,
which means that they were thinking about
here,
Africa. They had a plan. They were thinking about Africa and about influence. They had not stepped.
As they continue to
you're
think,
painting the picture
as they were thinking
that
and
America
coddling,
had taken a back seat.
As they were thinking,
they were
thinking and coddling the thought.
They were not thinking and coddling the thoughts.
But you just said
they
were still thinking and planning and doing whatever it is that they wanted to do.
They were hosting
They were not
us.
being, as they continue to host you and give you wine to drink and not even allow you to think about what was really going on. China was here offering you more money, and you were taking.
Same way we had a China conference,
and this
same
is
way
what
we had
I'm
an
saying.
America conference.
Exactly,
Yes.
and the things that were offered and the things that people came back with was significant in the sense that people said, okay, this is actually somebody that we will turn to when we need something to be done. I am saying that at this point, it is clear that even if they want to continue with their influence in Africa, it is a counter move, clearly, to the influence and inroads that China has made on this continent. And we can't divorce
beef
ourselves
that
from
our
that.
leaders have had with America is that they give some moralistic conditions for X, Y,
Which they
Z.
don't want.
Like now, look, after that summit, after that state visit by our president, where they signed a deal to do Mombasa Road, they still haven't started. Condition upon condition. Oh, who's a contractor? Oh, how much money is it? Is it viable? Is it not viable? Visit from China, Come,
Direct.
starts.
Finish. Exactly. And that kind of thing,
In
of
fact, you
course.
get the impression when they come back from that, they're not empty-handed when they come back.
Yeah.
So now, if you were one of those countries that had the
envelopes.
power, wouldn't you be thinking to yourself and say,
I was thinking more of backpacks.
wait a minute,
that
these
too,
guys come and they move on with this
Suitcases.
thing. Another country with some kind of influence, you would think, how
If
come
you're
it
telling
doesn't
me
work
that-
with
if you were
us?
telling me that
How come
Mike
it doesn't
Pompeo-
work with us
if you were
and it
telling me,
works with
Ndu,
them?
Ndu, if you were saying that Mike Pompeo was coming to those three countries with a different approach, saying that if we sign a deal today, we are not asking for all these conditions, we have changed our stance, then I would buy it.
But
they're
that
still
is not
doing
their
exactly-
policy.
Exactly.
That
They're
is not
doing
their
what
policy.
they've been doing.
And I am saying, by virtue of the fact that they're going to the countries that they're going to, there is still a way that they're trying to make sure that they cement this position by going to these particular countries. That's what I'm saying. And they are countering moves to make sure that they remain, in terms of the continent, they remain in that position. That cannot be ignored.
All right, this conversation has to continue at some other time. City, resign,
Yes. It's
step aside.
No, when you resign, you voluntarily leave a job or you leave the office. You leave, okay? Step aside is a temporary position.
You have suspended yourself.
Yes, awaiting.
You could come back.
You could come back, but you've resigned, gone.
Bye-bye.
You've said thank you. I am not here anymore. Stepping
Sawa.
aside, there's the option you could be called back.
Say bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, have a good day and thank you very much for tuning in. Join us again tomorrow. The situation continues 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. 3 o'clock, you have Monique who will be taking you home on Spice Drive until 7 p.m. and then 7 to 10